Hi Gurren-san, Yukimaru said while Gurren sighed. Just Gurren. The san is annoying, she said, and Yukimaru shook his head with a smile while they walked off. Next morning, Hinoken was out in the lake like yesterday and waited for everyone to come out of their hiding. Naruto sighed and skipped a stone. He couldn't seal the Sanbi because that would require a human, and he'd be damned if he made a Jinchuriki. He doubted he could seal Sanbi in an object as well. Kyuubi told him that while they could be sealed in objects, it wasn't going to stay long before they broke out. Naruto would just have to wait. So what's the plan? Makoto asked, and Kushina suddenly smiled. She grabbed the hilt of her sword and everyone tensed suddenly. We fight Databane, Kushina said, and everyone immediately dodged to the sides as a crystal dragon slammed into the beach. Kushina and Naruto backflipped while Fuka protected Yura and moved to the side. Makoto, Kakashi and Yugao had jumped into the air before landing. They watched as Gurren came from the field. Kushina glanced at Naruto and the blonde gave a silent nod of his head. She nodded and turned back while Gurren smiled. Well, it looks like we have guests. Would you leave if I told you to? Gurren asked while Naruto came up. Not without the Sanbi. Sorry, but Orochimaru's not getting his grubby hands on this. Actually, he won't be getting his hands on anything since he couldn't get it anyway, Naruto said, and Gurren growled. She noticed the rest of Hinoken smirk. It was then that smoke popped up and everyone heard a dragon's roar. Enryu, smoke dragon, a voice shouted, and they watched the dragon cover the entire beach. Naruto sucked his teeth from the smoke before he noticed 4 other shadows come into the cloud of smoke. Clashing could be heard around Naruto, and the blonde took out his sword only to block a crystal blade. He narrowed his eyes while seeing Gurren grin at him. You're dead, she said, but Naruto shook his head and Gurren was punched across the face by a clone, sending her flying back. Gurren brushed her cheek before everyone heard a shout. Ah! Yukimaru shouted while Gurren smirked. Kushina smirked as well and held up a hand sign. Kai, she said silently before getting back to the fight. With Kakashi and Makoto. The 2 Hinoken members stepped away from Narari and Kakashi flashed his Sharingan while Narari smiled. You're who Konoha sent to fight us. You look like amateurs, he said sort of femininely, which was something that Kakashi and Makoto noticed. And you look like a drag queen. The world is weird like that, I guess, Makoto answered, and Kakashi resisted the urge to snicker before the 2 dodged a kunai strike. Kakashi quickly unsheathed his sword and charged at Narari. The drag queen dodged to the side from Kakashi's blade strike and then dodged Makoto, letting out little shrieks which made them wonder just how tough he was. With Fuka and Yura, the 2 females were facing off against Kijiri, who was looking at them both with a shrug of his shoulders. His cloak masked his face so they couldn't tell what he was expressing. Why do I have to fight girls? Ah, such a bore, Kijiri said before he heard Fuka chuckling. She stood to her feet and brushed a hand through her hair before looking back to her cousin. Yura, please stand back. I think I'll have some fun. You try and stop that brat from doing anything stupid, Fuka said, and Yura wanted to retort to her fellow Uzumaki, but a glare that Fuka gave Kijiri left her no room to say that, so she left. So fighting a woman is a bore, huh? Allow me to prove you wrong then. After all, I hear Uzumaki females are supposed to be quite entertaining, Fuka said as she took out a kunai. Kijiri narrowed his eyes at her before the 2 got started. Yura made her way towards the boat that was quickly leaving with the kid right on it. She hurried and was about to catch up to it before she heard a shout. She saw Gozu overhead with a large fist coming down on her. Yura widened her eyes before another shout came. Uzu no Fukushu. Tikoku no Jisei, Whirlpool Revenge. Imperial Sacrifice, Kushina yelled as she slammed her sword into Gozu's arm. The 2 clashed and Gozu yelled out in pain as a wave of electricity came across his body. He was sent flying away into the trees while Kushina grinned. Go, we'll back you up, she said, and Yura nodded before running off. With Naruto and Gurren, the 2 continued to clash away at each other. Naruto narrowly dodged a strike to the face and Gurren jumped away from a swipe to her feet. She spun her body to send a kick to Naruto's face. The blonde was ready to block before he noticed her foot encased in crystal. Yeah, that would hurt. Naruto took the hit square on, which sending him crashing across the dirt. Gurren grinned before she noticed a poof. Kage Bunshin, she said in astonishment before Naruto shouted. Rasengan, he hollered and slammed the ball into the ground. Gurren had dodged the attack, but awed the destructive power only for her to notice that she was surrounded by Naruto clones. Gurren looked left and right across from them all before she heard the Naruto's shout. Uzu no Fukushu. Itarutokuro Shike no Mai, Whirlpool Revenge. Surrounding Death Dance, the Narutos shouted as they all converged on Gurren. The female shinobi of Odogakur glared before she did her own hand signs. Shoten. Kurenai no Kujitsu, Crystal Release. Crimson Fruit, Gurren shouted, and Naruto watched as she encased herself in crystal as they slashed at it. Now Gurren's armor was tough. Naruto could admit that because it stopped the attack cold. Naruto cursed and backflipped away before he saw someone coming. They were clapping repeatedly while Gurren raised an eyebrow. Nice work. But let's see how you fare against me, Rinji said, coming out before Naruto chuckled. He shook his head and turned to Gurren. Oh, how could you not see it? Hey Kabuto, why don't you tell Gurren that Sasuke killed Orochimaru? Naruto asked while Rinji paled. Gurren stared over to Rinji in surprise. Sorry, but I have no idea what you're talking about. My name is Rinji. You're obviously confused, Rinji said while sweating. Naruto grinned and nodded his head. Nuff said. See ya. Naruto dashed off and went after Yukimaru. Gurren gasped and quickly followed him before everyone heard thrashing around. Kushina smiled and everyone looked to see the Sanbi emerge. It roared violently while everyone took the time to notice it. Yukimaru continued his screaming while the chakra output raised. Acting fast, Naruto quickly swung his sword out. Shikan no Mai, Naruto said, and Gurren could see 4 spirits come out of Naruto's sword. Pakura, Dan, Kimimaro, Fujika's assist Ka-chan and the others. Take out these guys. Also Pakura, I want you to take out Rinji for me, Naruto said, and the 4 beings nodded and floated off. Naruto could see Gurren right on his tail and smiled as he bit his thumb and traced it over his seal. Kuchio's no jutsu, Naruto shouted, and Gurren suddenly felt the air go cold. She felt an immense ki wash over the beach and the shinigami appeared behind Naruto. Shin, time to work. Help me deal with this thing, Naruto said, and Shin looked up at the Sanbi inside. Another Biju that he had been summoned to fight. Very well, what needs to be done? Shin asked, and Naruto looked up before he smiled. Ka-chan's seal should be working in 3, 2, 1, Naruto said, and soon everyone was blinded by a huge light that came from the Sanbi. Its light blinded everyone, even Gurren and Naruto, before they faintly saw the Sanbi open its mouth, and Gurren gasped. No, Yukimaru, Gurren shouted before a blast of water came from the Sanbi's mouth. It was only a few inches away before Yukimaru was pulled and pushed into the water below. Yura coughed to keep Yukimaru afloat while giving a thumbs up to Naruto. The Sanbi roared out again before its tails thrashed violently. It shook the lake that people were on before it noticed Naruto and Gurren. Oh shit, no no no. Naruto said repeatedly before all went dark for him. Gurren-san. Yukimaru shouted while Yura struggled to bring him to shore. Yukimaru cried at Gurren and Naruto getting inside the Sanbi. This wasn't how the plan was supposed to go. Yukimaru shouted out and the chakra bursted Yura away from him before the Sanbi raged again. Being even more violent this time around. With Kakashi and Makoto. Kaden. Karyu Enden no Jutsu, the 2 yelled together, sending a roaring fire at Narari. The drag queen shrieked out before he placed his hands into the air. Nensikai, viscous water mass, Narari said while Kakashi and Makoto watched as a strange liquid formed from his suit. It made a protective barrier over his head as the fire slammed into the water membrane. Narari chuckled at seeing his technique stop the fire before he turned to the others. You two are really weak. I'm surprised that Konoha sends this few people, Narari said with a feminine chuckle, making Kakashi shivered. He and Makoto glared before Kakashi did a hand sign. He quickly took his blade back in his hands and everyone could see a white light cover the field. Kakashi then vanished and appeared behind Narari. The drag queen ninja widened his eyes in surprise of Kakashi's actions while the Cyclops Hinoken member closed his sword. Shank. Kakashi carefully closed his sword and a huge lightning line appeared from Makoto's position and in a crazy zigzag crossed Narari to where Kakashi was. Reikiri Isn't lightning blade. Single flash slash, Kakashi said, and Narari dropped to the ground. He didn't even cough up blood. He just laid there dead from Kakashi's attack. Makoto whistled before she looked at the ground to see a searing line across the ground with residual traces of lightning across it. Kakashi turned around and gave an eye smile. Let's go get the others, he said nonchalantly while Makoto felt that the only other option was to nod. With Fuka. Raiden. Jibashi, Fuka shouted and she slammed the ground sending down a wave of lightning over Kijiri. The man dodged to the side and sent a shuriken at Fuka who blocked it with her kunai. She then quickly turned her head to the side to meta kick. Fuka dodged that attack before she slid between Kijiri's legs and came up around. Kijiri turned around to met the female Uzumaki's lovely smile. You know, you're cute. However, you're not as cute as Naruto-kun, so I'll just have to kill you, Fuka said like it was the easiest fact in the world. Kijiri narrowed his eyes at her before he did a hand sign. Taju Kemari Bunshin, multi-smoke clones, Kijiri said before he vanished in his smoke. Fuka could see dozens of smoke clones all around her and her patience was running thin. The Uzumaki chuckled and before she did her own hand sign. This is enjoyable, but you're beginning to bore me. Time to die. Sweden. Heron Bansho, water release. Stormy blockade, she said and Kijiri watched as a large fall of water appeared over them both, but he easily dodged that and jumped into the air. You think that's enough to take me? He asked and Fuka merely had a smile on her face. Who knows, she said walking away. Kijiri landed on the ground before Fuka snapped her fingers. An huge explosion came behind her and Fuka brushed her hair with a light chuckle. Kaden. Senka no Jutsu, fire release. Sage fire technique, she said before she was regrouped with Bayugao. With Naruto and Gurren. Naruto groaned and got to his feet. He coughed and opened his eyes. He looked to see that he was somewhere, but he didn't know where. Naruto turned his head to the left before seeing Gurren. She cursed and Naruto noticed the look of her leg. It looked like it bended the wrong way. He winced at it and sighed. Oh, who got the number of that asshole who sucker punched me? Naruto groaned while Gurren snorted. Bot time you woke up, she said and Naruto snorted back at her. I don't think humans are supposed to bend that way, he said jokingly before Gurren sent him a death glare. Naruto chuckled despite himself before he got to his feet. Where are we? Naruto asked while Gurren sighed. This wasn't a part of the plan. We're inside the damn turtle. Gurren shouted while Naruto looked around. Yep, definitely the insides of some kind of creature. He sighed again before he saw Gurren tried to get to her feet. She used the wall for leverage and when she got a good balance she slumped to the floor. Naruto watched this for 3 times more before he sighed. Here, let me help you, he said before his hand was swatted away. Shut up. I don't need your help. Not now, not ever. Gurren said and Naruto glared at her. Gurren growled at him, but it was then that she could see just the smallest traces of sadness in his eyes before it was masked. I didn't know that family was so mean, Naruto said while Gurren's eyebrow twitched. She turned to see Naruto's goofy smile and snorted. She was related to this buffoon. No way. And you expect me to believe that? She asked and Naruto advanced on her. She tensed, but she just noticed him look at her back and he saw the swirl symbol. Naruto chuckled and he showed the swirl symbol on his arm. Gurren widened her eyes to it and Naruto sighed. Why am I only finding female Uzumaki? Naruto asked out loud while Gurren stared at him incredulously. Naruto merely placed his hands down and picked up Gurren while she gasped and unintentionally wrapped her arms around his neck. We've got to stop meeting like this, Naruto said while Gurren just settled for looking at him. She then punched his arm and growled. Yeah, whatever, just hurry up and get us out of here, she said and Naruto quickly carried her off though on the last step he huffed. Damn girl, he huffed while Gurren growled. Are you saying I'm fat? She hollered while Naruto sighed. She wasn't fat, not she was hot. Sort of like Fuka, she seemed to be her age if not a year or 2 older. Had that older woman feel that his mother had, but nowhere near as appealing or even as satisfying. No, of course not. You have a wonderful figure, Dadbeo, Naruto said while Gurren allowed a faint blush to grow on her cheeks. Oh, she wasn't going to live through this humiliation. Right, now then. This wasn't exactly in my plan, but anyway. If I'm to even have the slightest option to not kick your ass, then tell me right now. How is Orochimaru dead? Gurren asked while Naruto guided her through the tunnels. Oh, so you wanted to talk with me? Awesome, Dadbeo, Naruto said before Gurren snorted. She rolled her eyes before the shinigami came behind him. Uzumaki Naruto, you have summoned me, so what are you going to do? Shin asked, making sure to appear invisible to Gurren. Working on it, Naruto replied while Gurren looked at him weirdly. Was he working on a reply to her answer? Oh, she couldn't wait to get out a strangle her apparent family member across his throat. Back in Konoha, Shikamaru stood in front of Kurenai's door and knocked. His eyes red from the tears while Kurenai opened the door. Shikamaru took a deep breath and told Kurenai the news. Kurenai widened her eyes to Shikamaru's word. No, 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 Kurenai said as she dropped to her knees. Shikamaru couldn't say anything before he watched Kurenai cry, letting the tears fall from her eyes. He wanted to comfort her and tell her that it would be alright. He could just hope that whatever this benevolent force that was reviving people was doing, that it would do it for them again. It had to. It just wasn't fair for Asuma to die. Kurenai continued to cry in her apartment door and Shikamaru stayed with her the entire time before he looked up at the sky. I don't know if you're real or not, but please, I'm begging you. Please bring back Asuma to us, Shikamaru said to the raining sky that seemed to perfectly mask his tears from staining his jacket. Council room. Tsunade sighed along with everyone else. Izumo and Kotetsu had given Tsunade the report instead of Shikamaru. Hearing that report, then Tsunade could understand just how Shikamaru was feeling, which was why she didn't reprimand him for not coming. To think that another Sarutobi has died, Homura said while the rest of the council was silent, well except for an enthusiastic councilman. But look at Makoto-sama, Hanako-sama, and even Kushina-sama. Maybe he will come back as well, the man said, trying to raise some people's spirits. The civilians were sort of happy, but the shinobi side didn't look convinced at all, well except Hiyashi. He knew the reason why, and he knew it would be hell if Naruto did do it. One hand, he would make everyone happy and revive Asuma, who many people know had died, and end up revealing his contract. On the other hand, if he said he wouldn't, then everyone would stop believing in such things. That's not to say that it will happen for this case, Hiyashi interjected, which seemed to get everyone to control themselves. You can't say that. You got someone back. None of us have. A civilian hollered before Tsunade slammed the table. Shut up. We're not going to leave anything to any stupid chance. We shall hold the burial for Asuma in 2 days, Tsunade said while people calmed. Tsume sighed, and so did Shikaku. Everyone in this room had known Asuma personally. Speaking of Tsunade, I hear that the Uzumaki brat has a contract. Mind sharing the details? Homura asked while Tsunade twitched. Her eyes darted to the left fast to see Hiyashi's emotionless face, but his eyes showed a bit of concern. What does this have to do with anything? Tsunade asked, stalling by as much as possible. Nothing, I'm sure, but it seems that people are talking of deaths in Uzumaki-san's contract. I can't help but think that he might be the reason that they are coming back. Are you saying that Naruto is pulling an Orochimaru on us? Please, the pup doesn't have a single evil bone in his body, Tsume interjected rather harshly. She liked Naruto. He was good company when he had the time to visit the Inuzuka family. I agree. Naruto-san is rather strange, but we all know that he doesn't have control over life and death, Shibi said. Oh, if only they truly knew. Be that as it may, all records of summons must be catalogued into Konoha's records. Tsunade, you must tell us what contract he holds, Koharu pestered while Tsunade sighed. This was getting tough. And what would you do if it was such a big deal? Hiyashi asked with his hands folded. If it's a big deal, then we'll ask him where he got it. Also, he's got anything to do about this, Homura said while Tsunade chuckled. Careful both of you. I am still the Hokage and Naruto is one of my shinobi. Besides, he doesn't answer to you. He answers to me, Tsunade stated while the civilians glanced at each other. She seemed rather protective over a simple summons contract. We're looking out for the village's best interests is all, Tsunade. You know that, Koharu said that it was like a fact. No, actually Tsunade didn't know that. She hardly knew what these old geezers thought about half the time. She had been informed of how asshole-ish they were to Naruto in his childhood, and now that Kushina, the Yondaime's wife, had returned. He was the great heir to the Namikaze clan and Uzumaki clan. Damn hypocrites. Whatever, Tsunade said with a huff. And that is why we ask that you call back Naruto and his team from what they are doing. Which we really don't know. Please do that at your earliest convenience, they said, and Tsunade adjourned the meeting. People filed out, but Hiyashi stayed behind. What are you going to do? He asked, and Tsunade rubbed her temples. I don't know, Hiyashi. I just don't know, Tsunade said to him before the two left as well. Somewhere near AIM. And what makes you think that I will go with this idea? Madara asked, folding his arms. Danzo smirked with his two rude members behind him. Because I know that you want the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, and my sources tell me that said blonde has been seen in the vicinity of Wave recently. Isn't Akatsuki looking for the Biju anyway? We're not looking to capture that boy yet. However, you do propose a nice idea. You don't mind if I investigate before I make my decision? Madara asked while Danzo snorted. Of course not. Take as much time as you need, but make sure to look beyond the reaches of Wave. You never know about that boy, Danzo said, and Madara turned around. Sounds like you're scared of him, he theorized, and Danzo resisted the urge to laugh outrageously at such a ridiculous comment. Surely not. I'm just sick of him being around us all, Danzo said, and Madara disappeared. Be ready, Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Danzo said before he walked off with a satisfied smirk. Chapter 27. Go left. Go right. Are you stupid? Will you shut up and just let me run for a damn second? Naruto shouted as he continued to carry Gurren through the body of the Sanbi. The two had decided to place their conversation on hold for when they got out merely because of the fact that they were being chased by miniature Sanbi. It was a pain in the ass, and Naruto had no way of knowing just where the hell he was. It pissed him off outright, and Gurren's yelling wasn't making him any better. Naruto turned a sharp left while Gurren continued, much to Naruto's amazement, to fire crystal shuriken at their opponents. She cursed at the hard shielding that the turtles had, but she couldn't very well complain. If Naruto had left her, then she would be done for, but he didn't. Gurren stopped firing for a small second and looked up to Naruto, who was currently still speeding through the walls of Sanbi. She looked at him for a bit before turning back to see that they had lost their pursuers. You can stop. They stopped running after us, Gurren said while Naruto's feet skidded to a stop. He looked behind them both to see that nothing was after them. He sighed and leaned against the wall while gently placing Gurren on the ground. Naruto had been following some clones from their memories about which was the best way out. One had found an opening, but it was quite a ways off. Man, that was close. Are you alright? Naruto asked while Gurren nodded her head. She slowly leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes. Her closed shifted to tell Gurren that Naruto had leaned against her. She slowly opened one eye to see Naruto just next to her. Hey, would you mind telling me how you're an Uzumaki? I mean, you look nothing like what I was expecting an Uzumaki to look like, Naruto stated, and Gurren wasn't sure how to take that, as it might have sounded like an insult, but she would just have to think about later. You asking me? I wouldn't know it. It's not a really common name. I don't know whose side of my family has Uzumaki blood. I'm just as clueless as your little brother, Gurren joked while Naruto's eyes shot open. He glared at Gurren, which made her smile. I never had any siblings. I was just an only child and an orphan. I always wanted someone to call a family. Even if it's for a little bit, I thought I would just say that, Gurren said while Naruto seemed a little shocked that the hostility was gone from her voice. It was nothing like an hour ago. It felt a lot more soothing, more melodious. Close to his mother's, like he had examined earlier. All the more reason that you should come home and not be with that fag Orochimaru. Besides, he's gone. It's not like you have anything to be scared of, Naruto said before he got a jab in his shoulder. I'm not scared. Orochimaru-sama saved me from my poor life. It was a chance to survive and I took it. I hold no regrets over that. I only have one true regret, Gurren said while Naruto glanced to her. Is it because of Yukimaru? Naruto asked, and Gurren looked at the blonde shocked while Naruto snickered. You have that kind of expression on your face. So what is it? Naruto asked, and Gurren shifted slightly. I killed his parents. Orochimaru said it was for a good purpose. I felt it was wrong, but I didn't want to go back to that life. No, not back to the bullshit that I faced when I was younger. It was then that his mother only asked for me to do one thing, take care of him for her. She actually smiled at me before she died. I still shiver from it. It's like I lost and she won in a sense. I don't get it, Gurren said while Naruto smiled. He filled his eyes with Honsho and looked up. He could see Yukimaru's father and mother floating above him. He only knew that was them because they told him so. He noticed them float down and slowly pat Gurren's shoulder. Naruto wasn't sure, but somewhere he knew that they had been flying around being near Yukimaru and Gurren. I think they forgive you, Naruto said, suddenly getting Gurren to look up at him. The blonde smirked and Gurren seemed captivated by his eyes. The sparking power inside of them just seemed to take her breath away. Can you see the dead or something? Gurren joked while Yukimaru's mother and father turned to him. Naruto looked at them and noticed them grin and giggle at him. He snorted and then leaned back. More or less, he said, shocking Gurren, but he didn't give her the chance to think over those words as he spoke. Yukimaru really likes you from what he's told me. I'm sure that he would go with you anywhere so long as you did what you wanted. That seems to be the type of person that he is. It's the type of person I know you are. Want to know why? Because you're an Uzumaki. Family means more to us than anything else. It's what I feel from you. You want to take care of him, Naruto said while Gurren chuckled. I see. And what makes you think that I will go with this? Gurren asked while Naruto smiled. He then grabbed the hilt of his sword and slowly sheathed it. Well then I'll just drag you. With that leg you won't be able to force anything, Naruto said with a smile. Gurren scoffed before she closed her eyes. Did she want to? Could she? Would she? She would be taking a large risk, but then again, Gurren wasn't one who wasn't used to such things. Well, get me up. I'm not going to be able to go back home if we don't get out of here, Gurren said while Naruto chuckled. He stood up and grabbed Gurren into his arms. He then noticed Gurren lean up and whisper something in his ears. Naruto's eyebrow twitched at her words while she leaned back. You're kidding, Naruto said before Gurren placed a crystal blade to his throat. She just smiled and Naruto sighed with a roll of his eyes. Fine. Alright then, let's get going. Gurren Onichan, Naruto said while Gurren retracted her blade and smiled. If we must then, she said as they shot off. With the rest of Hinoken. Everyone was covering their ears from the loud noise that Yukimaru was shouting. Gozu had watched his comrades die because of the rampage of the Sanbi. It was coming all around them and the members of Hinoken were coming together. Where is Naruto? Yugao asked, seeing an absence of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki while Kushina sighed. She turned back to the Sanbi while everyone else widened their eyes. Sochi is inside somewhere. I'm sure he'll want to get out, but I don't know how to get him out of there, Kushina stated while everyone groaned. Kakashi then turned his head to see Fuka coming in with a crash as she coughed. She brushed her lip with a grin before everyone noticed Rinji coming out his hiding place. Kakashi glared while he helped Fuka to her feet. That bastard is tough, Fuka said with a grin while Kakashi stepped forward. He quickly took his sword out and walked towards Rinji. You guys try and recollect Yura and Naruto. I can hold him back. Other than that Gozu person, he's the only one left. I can handle this, Kakashi said while the others nodded. They all quickly flashed out while Rinji smiled. You're only delaying the inevitable, he said, but Kakashi didn't pay that any mind. He knew it wasn't inevitable. Not if Naruto and Kushina were still around. They were the most unpredictable types of people that you could meet. If you have the time to talk, then you should fight, Kakashi said as his sword clashed with Rinji's kunai. The man snickered before their clashes could be heard in the distance. Kushina stopped Fuka from running and decided to give her some orders. Fuka, get away from here. Take Yura and travel back to the campsite. Wait there for us. If we aren't back in 2 hours then come back. We're all too spread out and I want you to conserve as much chakra as possible. Understood, Kushina asked while Fuka merely smiled. She brushed a hand through her hair and quickly left in a shunshin while Kushina turned her head and smiled. Pakura delivered a sharp kick to Gozu's chin, sending him flying into the air. She opened her arms as Kimimaro and Dan quickly jumped on them and into the air. Unagi no Mai, dance of the willow, Kimimaro called out as Gozu saw bones come from his body. He then turned his head to see Dan do a hand sign. He grabbed Kimimaro's leg and swirled him around. Ninpo. Rei no Taisen, ninja art. White being rushed, Dan shouted as he flung Kimimaro towards Gozu. The large man tried to block it, but Kimimaro's body slammed into his and it sent him directly towards Fujika's. The swordsman brought his sword back and everyone watched a light come over it. Kenjutsu. Kei's ni Matama, sword technique. Spirit of the wind, Fujika's shouted as he slashed forward. He quickly pierced Gozu's body easily before the large man was sent crashing into the ground. Fujika's quickly closed his sword and closed his eyes. You were a magnificent opponent, he said honorably. The spirits turned to their target who was on the ground. All were about to walk away before they heard him cough. Please, he said, making them turn around. Please tell your master, not to hurt Gurren. She means well. I hope that she will be alright. Take her from this life, he said before he died. Everyone glanced at each other before they spirited out and back into Naruto's sword. Kimimaro was the only one who took the longest. He bowed to Gozu before he left. Kushina had seen the whole thing and smiled as she knelt down and closed Gozu's eyes. She was sure that Naruto would have saved this one if he had been given a little more time, but he wasn't. It seems that not everyone can be saved, but it was a burden of the shinobi world. Kushina stood to her feet before she turned around to still seeing Yukimaru screaming. His voice filled with pain and hurt. Sochi, you'd better get out here now or things are going to get more of a pain than they already are, Kushina said while she looking up at the Sanbi. With Naruto and Gurren. Naruto quickly landed down to the ground along with Gurren. The blonde turned to her and she smiled with a nod. Naruto nodded and summoned 3 clones next to a wall of flesh. He moved Gurren behind a wall while he held up a hand sign. Kai, Naruto shouted as the entire wall exploded. Gurren covered her head and ears from the explosion while the dust settled. Naruto saw that the spot was untouched and cursed underneath his breath. The blonde growled and sat down while Gurren looked to see that the situation was unchanged. You're sure that your clone dispelled here? Gurren asked while Naruto nodded his head. He was more than sure of it. Gurren slowly leaned against the wall while Naruto sighed. He quickly took a kunai and threw it at the wall just out of frustration. They both heard a squelching noise and they noticed the kunai get pulled into the flesh. Naruto widened his eyes while Gurren's form twitched. Looks like I found it, Naruto said while Gurren shook her head. She sighed while Naruto grabbed her. He pushed against the flesh and the two were quickly consumed inside. It was a very tight fit, but Naruto and Gurren could see a very white light overcome them both before they passed out. It only took a few minutes, but Gurren opened her eyes. She blinked and noticed the sand on the beach. They were out and it didn't take long at all. Gurren grinned despite herself and turned around. That grin didn't stay long as she saw Naruto floating in the water. Gurren gasped and quickly inched herself over to Naruto and dragged him out of the water. She quickly and lightly slapped his face to get him to stir while Naruto groaned. He opened his eyes and leaned up. Ah, what happened? Oh, we're out, Naruto said with a small grin across his face. One that Gurren returned before they heard a thunderous crash. The two Uzumaki rolled over and noticed Sanbi roaring its head off in the not-so-far distance. Gurren-chan, think you can hold that thing? I'm going to have to seal him and if we're lucky then it will be the last sealing that we will ever need to do to him, Naruto said while Gurren nodded. She quickly and painfully realigned her leg in place with a slight curse before standing. Leave it to me, but where is Yukimaru? She asked while Naruto closed his eyes. He looked left and right before smiling. He's back at the campsite resting from Yura and Fuka. They are taking care of him, Naruto said while Gurren breathed a sigh of relief. The two then shot off towards the Sanbi Biju while Shin appeared behind Naruto. Get ready, Shin. If what I'm going to do is something else then it should work. Can you handle another Biju? Naruto asked with a grin on his face as he turned his head to see Shin's steely gaze on him. It wasn't something that Naruto would likely get used to, but it was sort of comforting. Just tell me when, he said and Naruto nodded as he turned back in front. With Kushina. Kushina grunted as her chakra chains tried to keep the Sanbi bound. She was a lot stronger than when she did it to Kyuubi, so she had that going for her, but it was still a large hassle with the damn thing swirling around that an asshole. Come on Sochi, where are you? Kushina asked with a grumble while Makoto and Yugao continued to spam Kaiden jutsus in the hope that it would disable Sanbi long enough for them to find Naruto, but they had to give it credit. It wasn't a Biju for nothing. And to Kushina's far right was Kakashi still dealing with Rinji, who was suddenly kicked into the water with a splash while he huffed. The fighting was starting to wear on Kakashi's body. He was getting slightly winded and his overuse of his Sharingan was becoming a problem. This might be a problem, Kakashi thought to himself before he heard laughing. He watched in shock as Rinji emerged from the waters. He clapped slightly, confusing Kakashi before he grabbed his chin and peeled it off. Kakashi widened his eyes in disgust before his entire being told him to be ready as he saw Kabuto in the flesh. You're at your limit, Kakashi. I think it's time that I took things into my own hands, Kabuto said while Kakashi growled. He quickly flared Raiden chakra through his sword, making the mist clear around them. Oya, you still seem spirited. Are you saddened by the lose of Naruto? Kabuto asked with a small chuckle while Kakashi's Sharingan began to flare dangerously. Kakashi was about to lunge for Kabuto before they heard a shout. Shinigami no Kenjutsu. Daitamashi no Sanran Death God Sword Technique. Great Soul Scatter, Naruto shouted while he barely missed Kabuto's face, much to the medic's surprise before he jumped back, but he was still in range as Naruto quickly threw his sword into his left hand and managed a small cut across Kabuto's face. He noticed Naruto's grin before he backflipped away and touched his cheek. He cursed at a burning pain on it and looked to see a small trace of white fire over it. My Naruto-kun, you're tougher to get rid of than a cockroach, Kabuto said while Naruto landed next to Kakashi. You okay, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked while Kakashi dropped down on one knee. He huffed slightly and used his scarf to cover his eye again, letting the remainder of his chakra remain for a later time. Just fine and a little tired. How did you escape, Sanbi Naruto? Kakashi asked while Naruto grinned. Oh, just some help from family, Naruto said while Kakashi raised an eyebrow. It was then that both noticed Gurren land near Kabuto while she glared. Gurren-san, just in time. I could use your help to take care of these two. You distract them while I take out the others and gather the Sanbi, Kabuto said, but he failed to notice the smirk on Gurren's face as she quickly made a crystal razor blade. You got it, but I have a different plan, she said, and it was only from Kabuto's experience as a shinobi that allowed him to block Gurren's strike with a kunai. He glared at her while Gurren continued to sneer at him. What do you think you're doing? Kabuto asked with a growl while Gurren shrugged. Something that I should have done a long time ago. I'm taking Yukimaru from you and we're not going back. You come after us and I'll make sure you regret it, Gurren said, and if Kakashi wasn't tired then he would widen his eyes to the new development before he noticed the grin on Naruto's face. Yep, the blonde did something crazy again. Orochimaru-sama will not stand for your betrayal, Kabuto uttered, but the reaction he was hoping for wasn't there as Gurren looked at him with a lazy expression on her face before she made a hand sign. Don't take me for a fool. Orochimaru is gone and you lied to us. You sent us all to our deaths, Kabuto. I don't take kindly to that at all. You're just lucky that this is all I'm to do to you, Gurren said while Kabuto gasped to seeing his body overtaken by the crystals. He was slowly encased while Gurren shot off along with Naruto. Kabuto cursed underneath his breath while their footsteps disappeared. Gurren Nichan, do it now, Naruto said while Gurren did some hand signs. She quickly bit her thumb while Naruto did some separate hand signs as well. Shoten. Deisuisho Ro no Jutsu Crystal Release. Great Jade Crystal Prison Technique, Gurren shouted as she slammed the sand. Everyone around them was shocked by the yell as Kushina, Yugao and Makoto turned around. They all noticed the crystals rise up from the earth and encase the Sanbi inside. Ka-chan, get the seal ready. That's not going to hold. Naruto shouted and Kushina felt that he could explain later before she activated the seals on Sanbi's body. The back of the Sanbi lit up in light while Naruto allowed Shin to appear behind him while he cut his hand with a kunai. Uzushiogakure no Fuin. Biju Yokuatsu no Fuin, Hidden Whirlpool Seal. Tailed Beast Suppressing Containment Sealing, Naruto shouted as he jumped into the air. Everyone watched in awe as Naruto's hand glowed with the kanji for the word seal. Kabuto gasped and then all horror came back to him as the Shinigami appeared behind him. Kyuubi, are you ready? Naruto asked while Kyuubi opened his eyes. He snorted and sent a rush of chakra into Naruto's self-made seal while Naruto turned around. Go, Shin! Naruto shouted, and with his outstretched hand, Shin's arm went through Naruto's body and attached itself to Sanbi's head. The Biju roared before a chakra form of itself came from it and lunged for Naruto. The blonde quickly took out a crystal that Gurren gave him and slammed it with his hand while the chakra poured into the crystal. The light illuminated everything around them while Naruto closed his eyes. Everyone did the same before it dissipated. Naruto landed on the ground and smirked as he held up the crystal. He could feel a large amount of chakra inside it before everyone else felt the Sanbi rage again. Maybe even more violently. What did you do? Makoto asked while Naruto smirked. I sealed a yang half of Sanbi into this crystal. Go Ka-chan, do the rest, Naruto said while Kushina nodded more than happy to oblige. Uzu no Fuin. Saiteki Haikyo, Whirlpool Seal. Static Ruin, Kushina shouted as everyone saw the Sanbi groan outright. Its body twitched violently before it fell into the water unconscious. Its form slowly disappeared and its outrage had stopped completely. The lake was at peace after an exhausting time. Naruto fell to the ground and chuckled while Gurren lowered the crystals. Where is Kabuto? Naruto asked while Kakashi appeared. He got away. He always was like his master. Just a snake, Kakashi said while Naruto groaned. Much more work for him to do that would just piss him off. Yu Gao took the crystal from his hands and looked at it before handing it to Kushina. Biju can't stay in objects forever and this will break over some time. We'll have to think of something soon. This can't be permanent. Either the yang will dissipate and reunite with the yin or the sanbi here will vanish and will recollect itself to where the yang is, which is where we are, Kushina said while everyone sighed. Maybe we should have Jiraiya-sama look at it, Yu Gao said before Kushina gave a snort. I have no doubt of his skills, but Jiraiya can't handle this. No one can except for Naruto and I. In fact I dare say that Sochi's use of Fuinjutsu surpasses Jiraiya's, so there wouldn't be much of a point. Now then, let's go back before we have Fuka and Yura looking for us, Kushina said before they saw Gurren walking towards them. Everyone readied their weapons before Naruto stood up. He stopped them all and they watched as he helped Gurren over his shoulder. He then gave a wink to his mother which got a slightly widened eye from her and then a nod as she stayed silent. She's not with them anymore. She's with us. Both as a comrade, and his family, Naruto said with a thumbs while Gurren averted her eyes with a small blush on her face. She looked to see all of her comrades dead, especially Gozu. She narrowed her eyes and sighed before closing her eyes. She wished she could have saved him, but it was too late. Don't worry Gozu, I won't let you down. I now know what I'm supposed to do. Goodbye, friend, Gurren said as she closed her eyes. 4 hours later. Yukimaru groaned as he opened his eyes. He immediately met Gurren's smile while she had her arms folded. Glad to you're awake, Gurren said while Yukimaru jumped up to see that they were inside a tent. He then quickly held out his crystallized flower and smiled while Gurren nodded. To Yukimaru's surprise the blinds opened up to reveal Naruto coming to him. Naruto-san, Gurren-san, you're not fighting, Yukimaru said like it was an odd thing, but then again it could have been in his case. Naruto snickered and wrapped an arm around Gurren's shoulder. That's cause she's realized just how badass I am, Naruto said before he was delivered a swift punch to the gut. The blonde coughed with a laugh while Gurren snorted. Yukimaru, we're leaving this place. Not just this place, but we're leaving Orochimaru behind. I want a better life for you and I want you to be taught the right way about things. That is why I want you to come with me back to my ancestral home, Uzushiogakure. You may refuse, but I want you to know that the option is open, Gurren said and Yukimaru widened his eyes. So we'll be leaving Naruto-Nisan? Yukimaru asked while Gurren and Naruto glanced at each other. The other members of Hinoken, hearing the news, snickered to themselves. Nope, that's where I live buddy. You and Gurren are coming to live with me, Naruto said while Yukimaru smiled. Gurren chuckled before she knelt down to check Yukimaru's body. When are you leaving? Gurren asked Naruto, but that was Kushina's answer and she came through the tents quickly. Tomorrow, I'd suppose. We've been away from Uzushiogakure for quite a bit and I'd like for Naruto to meet up with Sasuke if he can and see what he's done lately, Kushina spoke and Gurren nodded. Very well. I shall take care of Yukimaru. He won't be a problem will he? Gurren asked while Kushina gave a thumbs up. The more, the merrier Databane, she said while she took Naruto outside to give the two some alone time. With that out of the way, Naruto decided to head off and do something that he should have done a long time ago. Naruto left the tents and appeared a long ways off from the campsite. He stayed on a large rock in the middle of a plain. He took out his sword and raised it into the air. Shikan no Mai, Naruto shouted as he called for only one person. That person quickly fell down on one knee. Her red hair falling behind her back while Naruto looked at her with a small smirk as the memories came back to him while the red head opened her eyes as she spoke. I'm at your service, Shikan-sa, ma. Oh fucking shit of the world. You're kidding me. It's you. She shouted while Naruto snorted. Still the foul mouth as I remember to Yuya, Naruto said while the female of the Sound Ninja 4 gasped and pointed her finger at him. How is it that you of all people are able to? What is this? Yuya shouted while Naruto smirked. Simple, I'm the summoner of the Shinigami. I think you know what that means, Naruto said making a mock death glare like Shin had taught him. Yuya quickly shut her mouth as she knew that since Naruto could see and talk to her then it wouldn't do well for her to be disrespectful. She was already dead, she didn't want to know what happens to a dead person if they pissed Naruto off. Why yeah, man you really have grown. It's amazing. You look less like a shithead now. It's awesome, Yuya said while Naruto chuckled. Well then, Yuya tell me a little bit about yourself. I never really got the chance to ask as we were trying to kill each other, Naruto said while Tayuya snorted. She sat down and folded her legs. I'm Tayuya, as you know. I used to be a servant of that bastard snake Orochimaru. I died from delivering that Uchiha prick to the pedo. I don't really like anything except playing my flute and practicing my genjutsu skills. I hate anyone weak and those fools who dare to call themselves ninja who haven't done anything. They should get their damn priorities straight. I also fucking hate that pedo and his damn lackey Kabuto, Tayuya said while Naruto raised an eyebrow. They were on your side. Why would you hate them? He asked while Tayuya laughed. Ha, who in their right or messed up mind would team up with them? Don't answer that, by the way. And I had to survive, damn it. I'm not dying the life I lived, and if selling my services to these people could keep me and kin alive then it worked out, Tayuya spoke while she finished. And where did you end up? Naruto asked while Tayuya's silent voice and embarrassed face said enough. Shut up, she said, and Naruto chuckled while Tayuya continued. I have a water affinity. I don't really train it, so I don't know shit. I hope to just live the rest of my life as a soul, Tayuya said while Naruto nodded. Also, you know Sasuke's back with Konoha and Orochimaru's dead, Naruto said while Tayuya grew silent. She then got a tick mark and growled. Are you fucking serious? We died for nothing. We all stayed up till 3 in the damn morning coming up with that damn plot, and the snake asshole can't even. Breathes deeply, fine, whatever. I just don't care anymore anyway, Tayuya said, calming her anger. Naruto found it rather funny that she hadn't changed after those 2 years, but it certainly made it entertaining. Also, I have to tell you about me being one of your relatives. Yeah, I fucking found out, thank you, Tayuya said, shocking Naruto. Wait, what? Naruto asked and Tayuya nodded. Yeah, while roaming this stupid earth I actually managed to meet my parents. Fucking beauty and the bastard, if you catch my drift. I instantly actually kicked my father's ass. He's the one who killed my mother because he had been on some weird shit in his life after we fell into debt. Mother tried to take me back to Uzushiogakure, but he killed her before she could. The damn bastard. I delivered him a swift jaw to the face. Also, ironically, I saw a new personality to her. She fucking kicked his ass in soul form. Apparently she was drugged and weak, so now that she couldn't be drugged, she fucking kicked his ass too. It was an ass kickin' jamboree. All the souls watched too. Still, she did love me, and I guess I can understand her. I just managed to run when she died. Also, she told me to tell you, that if I ever do meet you that I tell you, she wants to be revived if only so she can laugh in the bastard's face for what he did. Hell, me too. We also want to be mother and daughter again. Some emotional shit like that. I don't need that, Tayuya said while Naruto chuckled. Then what's the grin on your face? He asked. I said shut up, Tayuya shouted before she and Naruto shared a nice laugh with each other. They then settled while Naruto looked down on Tayuya. Tayuya Uzumaki, will you help me? Be my summon, follow my will and help me find the true path to peace. I will try to revive your mother, Yura Uzumaki, Naruto said while Tayuya raised an eyebrow. Who the hell is Yura? Oh, you didn't know. My mother actually changed her name. Yura is what she calls herself when she meets family. When it's me, she told me to call her Yu Uzumaki. Common mistake, but sure. I'll follow you. It's better than doing any of this shit that I've been doing, Tayuya said as she was sucked into Naruto's sword for his use another time. Welcome to the family, Tayuya, Naruto said with a grin before he walked off. Uzushiogakure. A warp hole appeared just outside of the rims of Uzushiogakure. Toby stepped out and touched the ground. He looked around while he slowly took off his mask. I wonder how long it's been since I was last here trying to find anything useful. HMPH, well, whatever, he said before he phased through the gates. Toby slightly twitched as he saw the new buildings, remade streets and newly rebuilt Uzushiogakure mansion. What happened here? He wondered to himself before he continued to walk through the streets. He could hear the sounds of fighting and Toby remembered to keep his guard up. He was only apart from Deidara to do this stupid thing for Danzo, but he didn't know that there was actually something here. Alright Yuri, take a break and then we'll have finished everything you know. By the time they return you will have become a high chunin, Haku said while Yuri smiled. She was slightly taller than the few days ago and her hair was pulled back into a ponytail. There are people here, Toby wondered before he vanished off. Haku went inside to go wash her face while Yuri was busy practicing her fuinjutsu. She was having a lot of fun doing it and she was getting stronger. Her sister might be on her way to Tokubetsu Jonin level, but she was making headway as well. Then she would be able to leave Uzushiogakure on a mission with her sister and brother. They could go together. You can come out, Yuri said while Toby twitched. He quickly appeared in front of her while Yuri readied a kunai in her hands. She lightly glared while Toby walked up to her. Who are you and why are you on this island? Toby asked while Yuri continued to glare, but she gave the mysterious man a response. I'm Yuri Uzumaki and this is my home. What's it to you? She asked and Toby gained a smirk behind his mask before he lunged for Yuri. The girl quickly threw her kunai at him and watched in sheer awe and sheer horror as the kunai passed through his body. She had aimed it right at his heart and it only fazed him like nothing. Yuri couldn't react in time as the kunai passed Toby and his hand grabbed her throat. Yuri coughed while Toby lifted her into the air. Well, it seems that something interesting is happening, Toby said while Yuri tried to deliver and kick, but to her surprise, again, her foot passed through Toby and went into the air. What are you? She asked while Toby snickered. Just sleep, Toby said as he forced her to look into his eyes. Yuri gasped at the spinning Sharingan before she blanked out and fell limply to the ground. Yuri. Toby turned around to see Haku charging at him in a hurry. She threw 3 Senbon at Toby and could only watch as the needles passed him. A minor annoyance, he said before he charged her also. Haku took out a kunai and clashed with one of Toba's own kunai. The sparks fell off the steel while Haku growled. What do you want with Yuri? Haku asked, keeping her eyes adjusted to Toba's feet from experience with the Sharingan while Toby kept his face impassive. Just to draw out a little somebody, he said as they clashed again. Haku seethed before she held up a hand sign and slammed the ground while taking water from the earth and the air around her. Haijutsu. Sensatsu Susho, Hidden Jutsu. 1,000 flying water needles of death, Haku cried out and the needles converged on Toby while he looked at them all. Not bad, he complimented as Haku sent the needles converging on him. She watched as they passed through Toby again and stuck to the air. Haku gasped while Toby slowly showed her that none of the needles were hurting him as he passed through them all. You cannot defeat me with your abilities, Toby said while Haku growled. She quickly charged back at Toby one more time and Toby did the same. Haku struck out her kunai while Toby passed her again. Haku gasped in sheer shock as her whole body passed him. What is this? Haku thought to herself before the two passed. Haku couldn't react as Toby slammed her in the back of the neck, knocking her out. Haku fell to the ground and passed out while Toby snorted. He then walked over to an unconscious Yuri and then picked her up and placed her on his shoulders. Nice meeting you, he said before he quickly left in the same wormhole that he had appeared in, leaving Haku in the fields of Uzushiogakures training grounds. Haku, Zabuza shouted coming through the gates. Right behind him was Mei and Rin, who had been near the shore catching some things for them to eat for dinner. Zabuza ran up to an unconscious Haku and lifted her up to his arms. Haku, wake up. Haku, get on your feet, Zabuza said, but Haku was out cold. Bring her inside. I can do something for her, Mei said, opening the doors she wished she could admire, but now wasn't the time. Wait, where is Yuri? Rin asked, slightly nervous as was Zabuza. When Haku woke up, they would all know and it wouldn't be good. With Hinoken, 2 days later. Everyone was quickly heading back to Uzushiogakure. After their successful mission they could all relax for a little bit. Or so they had hoped, which wasn't the case. Kakashi had gotten the summons mail from Konoha. He had told everyone that Asuma died and it was time for Konoha shinobi to come and remember his burial, which Hinoken had yet to do. So Naruto had allowed a Kage Bunshin and Yura to lead Guren and Yukimaru to Uzushiogakure while the others went to Konoha. So what about Sasuke? It's not like we can just contact him now, can we? Naruto asked while the others shrugged their shoulders. They could just vouch for Sasuke at the moment when they all returned. I still can't believe that he died. Asuma always had a lot of life to him, Yugao said with her head slightly down. Naruto sighed with a nod. The laws of death had applied to everyone, but him, his mother and a few revived people, at the moment. It was something inevitable and couldn't be discussed. Especially not with Shin himself. Yeah, but I wonder why we have to go. Hokage-sama knows about our jobs and coming back could ruin our reputation and get us found out, Makoto responded, but everyone felt a little relieved to go back. Maybe take a break for a bit before going back and giving Yuri some training. More on Naruto's part. So then we'd better hurry up then, right? Naruto asked, and everyone agreed as they shot off towards Konoha. With Tsunade, 1 day later. Tsunade sighed as she continued to do her work. She was waiting for the members of Hinoken to arrive and attend the ceremony for Asuma's death. Apparently people wanted the Namikaze family to appear and say some words about him. Some political shit like that. Tsunade didn't really know or even really care at all, but she could think about that later as she had some guests. Naruto, Kakashi, Yugao, Makoto and Kushina all dropped to the ground. Mission success, Hokage-sama. We've managed to stop Kabuto from capturing the Biju, Naruto said while Tsunade snickered. It's good to see you, brat. Been quite a while, I guess. Maybe a good month or so. Now then, you can save the mission report for later. Right now, Naruto and Kushina have to get ready for tonight. They will be beside me while I give Asuma's speech. I would like it if they did, Tsunade said while Naruto and Kushina glanced to each other. But I hardly know the guy, Kushina said while Tsunade sighed. Then Naruto will, and you'll help him with it, Tsunade said, and Naruto sighed. He merely nodded and everyone began to file out, but Tsunade called Naruto back. The blonde told his mother that he would see her at home while they all left. What is it, Ba-chan? Naruto asked while Tsunade combined her fingers together. Naruto, I hate to tell you this, but word is getting around, Tsunade said while Naruto narrowed his eyes. He cursed underneath his breath. This was exactly what he wanted to avoid. This stupid shit of rumors being spread around. Oh yeah, learn about the Kyuubi in a week. Why the hell would a Shinigami contract be different? Aha. You just can't get good Anbu these days, Naruto said glaring up at the ceiling knowing that the Anbu inside had flinched from his deadly gaze. It spelled death for anyone who was that stupid to actually try him. Naruto had been trained by his mother, an Anbu captain and at one point the head Anbu of the Anbu Black Ops. He knew how to handle people like these. The people who spilled the secret are taken care of, but the word has spread. I just advise you to not do anything show-offy at the moment, Tsunade responded while Naruto sighed. He merely nodded and dismissed himself before leaving. The blonde didn't even care about taking the streets as he was sure that people would look at him weirdly. Why? Well, because the shinobi who had seen him were looking at him weirdly. It freaked the blonde out to almost no end before he came up to his house. Naruto opened and closed the door before he gave a sigh and leaned against the couch. Oh god, I'm tired. I haven't been this tired in a long time, Naruto said as he closed his eyes. He immediately felt some extra weight and opened his eyes to see his mother on his lap. Naruto smiled while Kushina did the same. Are you too tired, Databane? Kushina asked, leaning her face down. Naruto chuckled as he raised his and the two met in a chaste kiss for a little while, just enjoying the feeling of peace reigning in their house. It didn't last long before Kushina got up and walked off. I'd like you to go to the village Sochi. Pick up some supplies for dinner. Can you do that? Kushina asked and Naruto gulped. He knew what that would be subjecting himself to, but denying his mother was just impossible. She had that kind of effect on him. Alright then. Just let me change, Naruto said with a grin as he walked off to his room. No sooner than 10 minutes did he come down minus his regular outfit and sword, since he wore some black jeans and an orange sleeveless shirt. He quickly left the house behind and entered the streets. Naruto could feel the stares on him as people murmured. They weren't exactly being discreet about it either. He could see some people looking at him longingly and other in confusion. He was lucky that he had covered the seals on his arms and hands so that they couldn't be seen. He hadn't been in the village an hour and he already wanted to leave. It was like the people were just daring for him to do something amazing. Naruto sighed lowly and continued walking before he looked up to see Shikamaru walking through the streets. Naruto narrowed his eyes before he grabbed Shikamaru's shoulder. Hey Shikamaru, how are you doing? Naruto asked while Shikamaru turned around. He sighed and rubbed the back of his head. I'm fine, Naruto. It's good to see you again after a while. I take it you're back because you heard the news? Shikamaru asked while Naruto nodded his head dejectedly. Yeah, I'm sorry for what happened to your sensei, he said, and Shikamaru just nodded his head up and down. Yeah, I suppose. I heard you would be attending the ceremony with Hokage-sama, Shikamaru responded, getting a nod from Naruto. Yeah, but first I have to get some things for Ka-chan. Just for dinner since we've been back, Naruto said, and Shikamaru gave a small smile, though it was half-hearted and Naruto knew it too. Are you going to be alright? He then asked and Shikamaru wasn't sure how to answer that. He really just wanted to find that Hidan guy and just take him to the grave for what he had done to Asuma. It just wasn't fair at all for Asuma to die like that. "I'll be fine," he said, a hint of loathing in his voice. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but merely shook his head up and down before he walked off while Shikamaru turned around. "Naruto, you would do anything for your friends, wouldn't you?" Shikamaru asked, narrowing his eyes. The blonde suddenly felt like he was getting interrogated. Naruto sighed inwardly and turned around, meeting Shikamaru's gaze with a strained smile. "That's right, I will," he said before he turned his head, not giving Shikamaru the time to analyze that smile of his as he quickly tried to disappear into the crowds. Shikamaru watched Naruto leave with a weird look in his eyes, but didn't say anything. He didn't need to. With Yuri. "Ugh," Yuri groaned as she opened her eyes. She widened them before seeing nice figures looking at her. "Toby brought the girl just like he was asked because Toby is a good boy," Toby said while Yuri raised an eyebrow. She felt weak and tired. Her body was stiff and her chakra nearly gone. She wasn't going to be doing anything for a little while. "Why did you bring her here, Toby?" Itachi asked, knowing his eyes, while Yuri decided it was best to just keep quiet. Toby was hoping to draw out the Kyuubi Jinchuriki with this girl. "Toby found her well," he said while everyone turned to Pain for any sort of explanation. "So this is an Uzumaki. Understandable, Toby, since you caught her, you and Deidara are in charge of her. Do not let her out of your sight. Also do not allow the Kyuubi Jinchuriki to take her. We capture the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and we're one step closer to our goal," Pain said, looking at everyone. Most of the members nodded their heads while Hidan cackled. "Why wait? We could go and get him now. The bastards managed to avoid us, but we'll find him and I'll sacrifice him to Jashin-sama," Hidan said with a grin while Kakuzu shook his head. "They are after Nissan. Naruto Nissan is in trouble," Yuri thought to herself, but she didn't say anything. She had to remember what Naruto had taught her, and that was, if you're captured then don't move or show any signs of waking before you learn what you should. She remembered that lesson well. Though in truth she hoped she wouldn't have to apply it. "Hey, I'm not a babysitter. We should just blow this kid up for all I care," Deidara said, but Pain shook his head. "You have your orders, Deidara. Do them and remember what I said," Pain told them before everyone left. Deidara scoffed while Toby knelt down and brushed Yuri's hair, making her inwardly stiffen. His hands felt cold, clammy and terrifying. How she managed to think that the shinigami was cute, but this knot was something new to her. "Well, Toby, carry the bitch. I'm certainly not going to do it. Oh wait, I have an idea on how we can use her. It seems that damn Uchiha is a little near here. I bet he and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki are buddy-buddy. We can use this girl right here, Toby, come on. It's time to go and make one less Uchiha in the world, Deidara said as he walked off. Toby quickly placed Yuri on his shoulder and walked off while whistling lightly. Konohagakure, nighttime. Naruto and Kushina were right beside Tsunade as she continued to give her speech. People continued to grieve, and it pained Naruto that he was seeing Konohamaru cry. He had lost the Sandaime and now his uncle. Naruto also noticed Kakashi in his black outfit for the occasion and Yugao the same. Makoto was in the crowd of people with her head low to the ground. The people crying were Ino and Choji. Shikamaru was just taking it hard. Naruto had heard that he had been a little antisocial and even got into a disagreement with his father. It really made Naruto wonder if he should revive Asuma or not. He especially saw Kurenai weeping. "And we will never forget Asuma's contribution to Konoha and for all he has done for us. Thanks to him, the will of fire will be engraved in our hearts and in our minds," Tsunade spoke, and while Naruto knew that words were nice and all, he still knew that they were just that. Words. They did nothing for nobody. That's why Shin said for Naruto to prove himself to the death god when they met. Actions speak louder than words. People watched as Asuma's coffin was carried away while some cried. Naruto wondered if he should just stop everything and was just about to before he felt a hand on his shoulder. Naruto narrowed his eyes and activated his Honsho, discreetly, and turned his head. He widened his eyes to seeing Asuma. He shook his head while Naruto narrowed his eyes. "Why not?" Naruto asked softly so no one could hear him. Asuma could see the tons of people at his funeral and it broke his heart. Especially Kurenai, Konohamaru, Ino, Choji and Shikamaru, so sad. Especially knowing how Kurenai felt the most. I'll admit, I never thought you would be it, but it seems that you are. So that's what you were hiding from the village. And with good reason too. No one needs to know about this contract of yours. For the good of the village they can't know. You really are amazing. Naruto, as you grow older you will know that everyone has their time. No one is unbound to death. I want to be with them all, but my time has come. I'm honored that you would risk exposure of your contract for but I can't let you do that. They wouldn't understand it, Asuma said to him while Naruto closed his eyes. If it's what you want, Naruto said while Asuma's body disappeared. People then returned to the front while Tsunade came down. Let's not forget him, Tsunade finally said before someone pointed to Naruto. Hey, you can do something, can't you? Weird stuff has been happening since you've come back. You know something, don't you? A random person asked while Naruto stiffened. Again all eyes were on Naruto and murmurs came from everyone. Kushina looked at her son worriedly while Shikamaru balled his fists. Everyone seemed confused while Naruto averted his eyes. Boss, what are they talking about? What do you know? Konohamaru asked while Hiashi and Hanako narrowed their eyes while Hazashi did the same. Tsunade growled at the damned comment. Now wasn't the time to spread that rumor, even if it was true. Hey yeah, Namikaze-sama is said to have a legendary contract. He can do something, can't he? Someone else asked. Naruto felt unsettled by the use of his father's name. It felt defiled in this sense. The murmurs increased and members of the council started to look at Naruto more closely. Kakashi stiffened and so did Yugao and Makoto. Naruto-kun, do you know something? Hinata asked while Neji glared. Kiba and Shino did the same while Kurenai stepped out of the line. She slowly, but surely walked up to Naruto. Everyone suddenly went quiet like Kurenai had commanded them to do so. They watched her walk up to the Kyuubi Jinchuriki with her redder eyes from the crying while she sniffled. Naruto, if you can do something, anything, that can bring back Asuma to us then please. I beg you. I want you to do it. I would do anything to have him back. Please, Kurenai said while everyone on her team and Asuma's team glared. Naruto took a deep breath, but he could feel Asuma's hand on his shoulder and he could tell he was shaking his head left and right. Yes, he knew, but he also knew the dangers that Kurenai's child would be in if Naruto did expose this secret. It would be a national incident from all the villages. Both big and small. This is a trial, Shikan. What is your answer? The shinigami as in thought as he hovered over the resting place. Hundreds of spirits were around him as well looking at the attraction. They all wanted to rush and defend their summoner from their friends, family and comrades, but they knew better before they heard Naruto say the words that would impact his village. I can't do anything, Naruto told her while Kurenai held her head down. She was silent and just walked away while people began to file out. Tsunade's anger was long gone and her fist unclenched. She turned to see Naruto just watching the people leave. Thank you Naruto, Asuma said, but he felt Naruto just brush past him. Just shut up Asuma-san, Naruto said before he vanished out of sight. Kushina frowned before the others recollected themselves. I'm going to go after him. I think we'll meet up later, Kushina said and everyone else agreed before she took a glance at Hiashi. He nodded his head and told his family that they were leaving as well. In all truth Hiashi was worried and he would find Naruto later. The blonde was one of his close friends after all. Everyone watched Kushina shunshin out of sight while Tsunade patted Makoto and Kakashi on the shoulder. It hurts him, doesn't it? Tsunade asked while Kakashi nodded. He left as well while Makoto and Yugao decided to just go home and rest from the day. Somewhere else. Well, that's everyone. Who would have thought, huh? I can't believe that Shinigami Ni actually found a summoner. Who the hell can handle that cold attitude all the time? A male voice asked while the others chuckled. I know, right? And apparently it's some boy named Naruto Uzumaki from Konoha. I can't wait to pit him against my summoner. After all, life is just a game, isn't it? Another person asked. About 5 other people nodded and chuckled at the same time, but one wasn't. He just looked on at the ground in front of him. Oi, Amaterasu Nichan. What's got you so down? Don't you enjoy your summoner? A man asked while the goddess of the sun snorted. Shut up Tsukuyomi. Life is not a game. Humans are not to be used for our amusement. You people are so stupid. I swear you're hanging around Jashin too much. You know he's a sicko, Amaterasu said while Tsukuyomi chuckled. Hey, at least my summoner has some tact unlike Shinigami. The guy is as cold as they come. He should learn how to have some fun with his job. Look at me, I like to create tidal waves from time to time. What can you do, goddess of the sun? Melt us all to death. Tsukuyomi laughed outright while Amaterasu snorted. And what do you think, Gaia? Amaterasu asked another woman who was looking down with a sigh. I'd have to agree with you, Amaterasu. I don't like this. As the goddess of the earth, I feel that we're taking advantage of this so-called game, Gaia said while Amaterasu nodded her head. You two are no fun. Just like Shinigami ni. Learn to lighten up. Live a little like me, Inari, Izanagi and Susanoo. It's fun, a girl said while Amaterasu snorted. Shut up, Izanami. You might be the goddess of creation and death, but you have no control over the spirit realm. That's where Shinigami Nisan rules, and you'd do better than to cross him. There is a reason why even when we had our summoners couldn't beat him, Amaterasu said while Izanami groaned. She didn't even want to think about it. Well, at least my summoner is interesting. I wonder who Baka Shin picked, Izanagi said before he was punched into a wall. Don't disrespect Shinigami-san, Susanoo told him while Izanagi wiped his cheek. Yeah, whatever. So, who are the first to meet each other? Izanagi asked while Izanami snickered. Shinigami-chan and Jashin ni. Both their summoners are supposed to meet soon. Oh, I can't wait to watch that. After all, being a god gets quite boring with no entertainment, Izanami said, and other continued to laugh. Amaterasu and Gaia sighed and looked off. What are we going to do? It's starting soon and all of the nations will be caught in it, Amaterasu said while Gaia shook her head. I don't know, but we'll come up with something. We have to, she responded before they looked at the rest of their family who didn't have a single care in the world. Both females wondered what it was like to be that blissfully ignorant. Oh well, they would learn soon enough. They all would. Chapter 28. Kushina looked left and right near the house for her son. She had lost him after Asuma's funeral and she was currently looking for him. Her face showed the longing look to know of her son's problems. However, due to their connection by her being his valve of spiritual power from the Shinigami, Kushina could feel Naruto's heart. It was tight, it was sad, and it was angry. She knew that he must have been trying his hardest to not be completely angry and let out both Kyuubi and his Shinigami powers at the same time. Come on, Sochi, where are you? Kushina asked from on a tree branch. Very soon an answer to her mental question came to her as she heard a loud crash. She saw a tree fall to the ground just a few feet away from her. Kushina quickly rushed off towards the sound of the crash, and with her speed it didn't take for her to see her son. Kushina's eyes saddened as she saw Naruto flail his sword around aimlessly, not really caring what he hit before he stabbed it into the ground. Kushina proceeded to jump down and carefully walk towards her son. Sochi, what's wrong? Kushina asked, and Naruto seemed startled by her voice and her presence as he really wasn't thinking that someone could be following. Naruto just sneered at the ground before he felt the smooth hand of his mother on his shoulder. Leave it to his mother to be able to calm him down. He didn't want me to revive him, Ka-chan. He said it was better that he was gone. He knew that I had the power to revive him so that everyone could be happy, even at the risk of my contract. I just wonder why, Naruto said, and Kushina proceeded to calmly slip her arms around Naruto's broad shoulder and turn him around. Kushina then placed a hand on his chest and smiled. I feel your heart, she stated, and Naruto raised an eyebrow before Kushina grabbed his hand and brought it to her chest, much to Naruto's embarrassment, but Kushina ignored it. She waited for Naruto to talk and the blonde straightened his face. I feel your heart, he responded, and Kushina nodded with a close of her eyes. I am alive because of you. I hold no regrets over it. I love you, Sochi. I assume that you love me as well, right? Kushina asked, and Naruto nodded fast, telling her that she couldn't be any more right in that regard. Kushina smiled and leaned back. Asuma-san knows what the village had gone through. He knows what they're going through. Have you ever wondered why the spirits around you have never asked to be revived for their loved ones? Kushina asked, and Naruto stopped to ponder that. He looked around him at all the spirits who seemed to have their heads turned embarrassingly. Taking the silence as a no, Kushina continued. It's because their people have moved on. There isn't a need for them anymore. Most of them had long, fulfilling lives and would want nothing more than to just watch their friends, family and other be happy. Not to mourn their deaths, but to live their lives. Shikamaru-san and Kurenai-san will not forget him, and neither will anyone else. You know why? It's because this village possesses the will of fire, Kushina spoke, and Naruto calmed down. He smiled and turned to see the spirits of most shinobi and civilians nodding their heads behind Kushina, showing that she was right in what she said. Did Tu-san tell you that speech? Naruto asked while Kushina blushed. She was about to yell at her son before Naruto shocked her with a kiss to the lips. It wasn't as lasting as she would have liked, but it got its point across. Thank you, Naruto said as he took up his sword and sheathed it. He then held out his hand for Kushina to grab, and she did so while Naruto pulled her to her feet. Now then, shall we go and get some dinner? I'm hungry, Databane, Kushina said, and she smiled when Naruto's stomach rumbled. She snickered while Naruto scratched his cheek. Well then, shall we go inside and get cooking? Hopefully you can still get me to cook us a little bit of dinner, Naruto said, and Kushina turned back to him skeptically. Since when can you cook? She asked, and Naruto just passed her before he winked, letting it hang around for Kushina's thought. She just twitched an eyebrow and she followed him reluctantly before Naruto turned his head. Also, Ka-chan, I would like it if we could train a bit tomorrow. I want to figure out the weaknesses to this time-space ninjutsu. If we're lucky then I can increase the time of the jutsu, but it needs experimentation. Besides, we'll have to teach it to you, won't we? Naruto asked, and Kushina just shrugged her shoulders before she reached into her pouch. She tossed to Naruto the crystal that was full of half the Sanbi's chakra. The entire yang chakra of that biju was inside the crystal, and it wouldn't break until Gurren did, or it broke from the age of time. They would just have to do something with it. Why, you ask? Because Kushina and Naruto could already see the small cracks beginning to form on it. 3 or 4 weeks at the most and it would break. Well then, we'd better hurry. I'm always on the lookout for a good time with a new jutsu, she said, and the two Uzumaki walked off towards their house. Uzushiogakur. Gurren and Yukimaru were quiet while Yura looked at Haku on the bed. They had just arrived 2 days ago to the island and Haku still hadn't woken up. She was out cold with a hard knock to the head and neck. Mei washed a towel and placed it over Haku's head while Rin checked Haku's heart rate. It was steady, a sign of no trouble to her life. Zabuza was on the couch tapping his finger on his arm almost impatiently. Fuka just leaned against the wall, not doing anything in particular, just watching everyone else. She's been out for 4 days already, Rin suddenly said while everyone sighed. They all leaned back away from Haku before Yura, Gurren, Fuka and Mei decided to introduce themselves to each other. Mostly Yura, Gurren and Fuka introducing themselves to Mei, their big cousin. I never would have thought that I would be a cousin to the Mizukage. It just keep rolling, doesn't it? Gurren asked as she shook Mei's hand firmly. The two women exchanged glances before she and Yura shook hands, acknowledging each other. Fuka and Mei took a good long look at each other as everyone felt that they could see a flash of lightning come between them before Mei held out her hand. I'm glad that Kushina's family hasn't died out, Mei said, and Fuka just smiled and shook her hand. It just took our blonde Uzumaki to bring us together. I'm pleasantly glad, Fuka said with a charming smile while Mei did the same. However, everyone could see the veins straining in their handshake with each other that caused them to sweat drop. It was only when everyone heard a moan that they turned to see Haku squirm. Zabuza jumped up while Haku opened her eyes. She glanced over everyone before what happened caught up to her and she quickly leaned up. Haku, what's wrong? Who did this to you? Zabuza asked while Haku placed a hand over her aching head. She then seemed scared and cursed as her hands tightened against the folds of the futon. Someone with an orange mask came to the village. He knocked out Yuri and took her. Haku paused as everyone turned to Yura, who was shivering almost uncontrollably before a small pat from Gurren calmed her down and everyone asked for Haku to continue. I tried to apprehend him, but there were 3 things that stood out for me. 1. What he was wearing. A black cloak with red clouds. The next thing that stood out for me was, he had a Sharingan. Haku paused again as a collective look of surprise came over everyone. As far as Zabuza, Yura and Haku knew there were only 5 Sharingan users. Those were Sasuke Uchiha, Yuna Uchiha, Makoto Uchiha, Itachi Uchiha and Kakashi Hatake. Rin widened her eyes to what Kakashi had told her at one point before his leaving. He had told her that Obito was alive. He had given Kakashi one of his eyes which Rin had transplanted. He wouldn't do something like that, would he? No, not Obito. Lastly was that he used a weird technique. I couldn't hit him, Haku said, and that brought everyone's attention to her again while Mei folded her arms, narrowing her visible eye. What do you mean that you couldn't hit him? Was he too fast for you to hit? Is that what you mean? Mei asked, and Haku shook her head, still trembling from the memory. She touched her person and slowly steadied the beating of her heart. Now, he was fast. Faster than me, but I could keep up with him for a while. When I mean I couldn't hit him, I mean, I passed through him. It was like he was intangible. I would throw kunai, senbon or shuriken at him and they would pass him and fall to the ground behind him. I couldn't hit him. It was like he knew it as well. He was toying with me, which is why he was able to knock me out. It was a terrifying experience, Haku said while everyone looked left and right. And he took Yuri. What kind of person is that? He's not some ghost. He took you down. Just like that? Yura asked, visibly angry. Her sister was somewhere out there in the world with Kami knows who and doing who knows what. Damn it, this happened because she was gone. He's not a ghost, Yura-san, and spirits aren't so far-fetched if you know what Naruto-sama holds, Haku said discreetly while Yura widened her eyes. She nodded and leaned back while Zabuza intertwined his hands. So that's all we have to go on. Well, I can tell you right now that if Haku's description is right, then it's Akatsuki who took her. I know of Akatsuki because I know one of their members. Kisame Hoshigaki. He was one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist under the Yondaime Mizukage, Yagura. I only knew of Akatsuki because Kisame was in my bingo book at one point and it showed his affiliation. I didn't know what they wanted though, Zabuza said before Mei and Gurren came in. I know, they said and both glanced at each other, but Mei allowed Gurren to continue with hers and Gurren thanked her cousin before clearing her throat. Yukimaru looked on through the group of people while Gurren spoke. I know of Akatsuki because I used to be in allegiance to Orochimaru. Akatsuki is an organization that is after the tailed beasts. I had recently heard before leaving that they have taken the Aikibi, Nibi, Yonbi, Gobi and Nanabi. That's 5 that they have at the moment and 5 people that they have killed. Well, the Aikibi survived by unknown means and I think I know. Was Yuri and Uzumaki also? Gurren asked and Yura nodded before the pieces started to come together. You think that they took Yuri to try and get to Naruto? Fuka asked and Gurren nodded her head. Nearly all of us here are Uzumaki, or have Uzumaki blood with the exception of Yukimaru, Haku-san, Rin, and Zabuza. If I wanted to get back at someone then that's how I would, Gurren said and Yura's response was to get up and walk towards the door. She quickly strapped on her shoes before Zabuza's voice, coming in low and authoritative, shook her. And where do you think you're going? He asked and Yura balled her fists. Where else? I'm going to go and find Yuri. She's my only sister and I'm not going to lose her. Yura exclaimed before she felt Zabuza's presence in front of her. She looked up at the swordsman folding his arms and blocking her way out. I'm stronger than you. Akatsuki is stronger than me. You aren't able to handle such a thing. All you are doing is going to your death. If they want Naruto-sama then there is a perfect chance that your sister is still alive. They wouldn't waste a valuable chance like that. How would Naruto-sama and Yuri feel if you did go recklessly? Zabuza asked while Yura growled. She just remained silent before Zabuza patted Yura's shoulder. Haku and Fuka have trained Yuri as well as myself and Kushina. By our standards Yuri is a high Chunin shinobi. She knows what to do if an enemy captures her. Don't be selfish, Zabuza said and Yura just paused at the door while everyone else fell silent. Still, there aren't that many Uchiha left in the world. Itachi-san, Sasuke-san, Makoto, Yuna are the only ones, Haku said before Rin shook her head. No, there is one more since I realized it. My teammate, Obito Uchiha is also alive. If he really is then he should be Kakashi's age if not a few months older, Rin said and everyone could hear the skepticism in her voice as she didn't want to believe it, but for Yuri she would have to put those feelings aside for another time. So we can rule out Sasuke, Makoto and Yuna. That just leaves Itachi Uchiha, but I met the guy. He's not the type to wear a mask. Much less an orange one. If he didn't want to be noticed then there is the use of it, but he only used one eye. Zabuza asked and Haku nodded her head. It's not that he could only use one. I think that was the only one he could use. His left eye was blocked out. I don't know if he couldn't use it or if he just didn't have it, Haku said and Rin trembled. That all, but confirmed it with her. It had to be Obito and if she was wrong then there was another Uchiha in the same predicament as Obito. She really hoped that it was the latter. So what should we do? I'm not going to stay here and do nothing. Yura all but shouted and everyone else agreed. Especially Zabuza. Nor are we Gaki. I don't know about Mei, but the rest of us are going to go searching. One of us should be the one to go to Naruto-sama and warn him. I propose Fuka, only because she's the one had been in Konoha before and they won't have a problem with her going back. The rest of us will get ready. Haku, how are you feeling? Zabuza asked and Haku nodded that she was fine as she decided to catch up on her sleep. Can the kid watch Haku? Zabuza asked and Gurren nodded as did Yukimaru. The two then went off to their rooms while Yura went to her own room. Fuka decided to sleep for tomorrow so that she could get to Naruto. I will keep a word out in Kiri for these people. I know how much of a mess that the Sharingan can cause, Mei said and Zabuza nodded his head as he watched her leave. Zabuza decided to sleep on the couch next to Haku for the rest of the night as well. With Deidara and Toby, the two decided to stop their walk for the night as Toby carefully put Yuri on the ground. It was around this time that both Akatsuki knew that she was well awake and aware of her situation, but she remained quiet merely because she didn't have anything to say to them and that she knew she would be rescued. Yuri was surprised that they hadn't tried to extract information from her surrogate brother, not that she would have told them anything anyway, but it amazed her. Oi, how long are you going to fake sleep him? Deidara asked the unconscious Yuri. She just opened her eyes and looked forward, not bothering to look her captors in the eye. Nor would she speak anything to them. She would protect her brother and the rest of the family. She also wouldn't drag Yura down. Noting her silence, Deidara scoffed and with a huff he walked off while Toby snickered at his senpai's actions. It was that laugh that made Yuri just how this asshole had not only infiltrated Uzushiogakure without them knowing, but also having that sick, demented look in his eyes that she had seen the first time. Toby soon stopped laughing before he dropped a rice ball from his clothes. It fell to the ground with a plop, alerting Yuri to the sound. It wouldn't do good if their captive was going to die of hunger. Yuri really was hungry, but her lessons on the human body had shown her that if she clicked off a portion of her brain then the stomach wouldn't request to be fed for at least a month. The downside to that was that when it ended then all hunger would be activated on her and she would pass out and die within the next 3 days without any food. She hadn't used that part just yet because Yuri, only known to Yura, wasn't really one to eat much if she didn't want to. You should eat. If you're a good girl then Toby will be a good boy and won't let senpai hurt you. Because Toby knows that you are a good girl. We just want the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and then you will be released, Toby said and he was sure that he heard Yuri snort. He could keep talking, but she didn't give a damn. Yuri, under training, had grown out of her childish ways and really came into her own. Granted she still read, much to Yura's chagrin, those yaoi books that would come out every now and then, but not as much. Yuri heard the sounds of shuffling feet and she knew that Toby was leaving her alone. He left behind a tree and vanished. It was then that Yuri leaned up from her laying down position and moved her hands back. They were tied so she had to shimmy towards the rice ball. She managed to take it and peeled off the plastic wrapper. Yuri held it in her hands for a second before giving it on good toss with her wrist. The rice ball went up and Yuri catch it in her mouth while a piece fell to her lap. It wasn't poisoned as Yuri figured, but she ate carefully and cautiously. Once she was finished, she swallowed it and leaned back down on the ground. Just in time too as Deidara and Toby came back from whatever they were doing. Toby noticed the missing rice ball and just smiled behind his mask, glad that Yuri had listened to him, but not in the way he thought. Well senpai, let's call it a day. We've got a lot ahead of us, Toby said and Deidara nodded as he leaned against the tree and fell asleep. Toby did the same before playfully giving Yuri the good night reply. Yuri didn't respond as she just closed her eyes and conserved her strength as well. With Sasuke and Yuna, the two Uchiha were currently near a sandy beach and Yuna looked on to see a medium-sized structure out there. She narrowed her eyes slightly before turning back to Sasuke. Alright, we've brought this fool with us and now you want to get 2 more. Geez Sasuke, you sure know some weird people, Yuna said while Sasuke just folded his arms. He then walked up to Yuna and proceeded to rest his hands on her shoulders. Yuna flinched from the sudden contact before she turned around. Sasuke gave her a quick kiss much to her surprise before Yuna closed her eyes and accepted. Yuna was still rather hesitant with some of it since Sasuke was her family, but well he just had that way with her she figured. Sasuke then parted upon hearing Suigetsu talk. Ah, I don't need to see that. Take your little incest shit somewhere else, he said to them both before Sasuke and Yuna glared at him. Suigetsu flinched from them both. Around his waist was just an expensive full-tang katana that he had bought until he could get Zabuza's sword, which was something that Sasuke was trying to avoid until the last possible moment. Don't be jealous, Yuna said before Suigetsu growled. Who would be jealous of you two? He shouted, but Sasuke just walked forward while Yuna followed him. Suigetsu growled and with a silent huff, he just followed the two Uchiha towards their destination as he wondered just why he was following the both of them. Sasuke came up to the former Orochimaru base and opened the door. There was a long flight of stairs going downward and he descended while Yuna followed him. The walls were gray all around them and a few ceiling lights were lit to show the way. So who are we looking for? Yuna asked while Suigetsu shivered. Come on Sasuke, we could do so much better than this bitch. Suigetsu whined, but Sasuke didn't pay him any mind in favor of answering Yuna's question. She was really the only one that he would give the time of day to talk with, aside from his team, because she didn't fawn over him like a good portion of the female population in Konoha when he was younger, but then again she was sort of older than him. Really, if you wanted to be technical, then she was 30 or 31 to his 16. However, Sasuke, contrary to popular belief, wasn't that technical when it came to things, or at least he didn't think so. We're looking for one of Naruto's relatives. Another Uzumaki. Her name is Karen and we'll really need her if we're going to be searching for Itachi, Sasuke said, and Yuna just shrugged her shoulders. It was then that everyone heard a few footsteps walking and Sasuke turned his head only to see a redhead in a purple shit and black shinobi pants with large open-toed shinobi boots, and she wore glasses on her face. Her vibrant red hair was what Sasuke had caught along with Yuna while Suigetsu just scowled. Who opened the fucking door to the base? Karen shouted before looking at Sasuke. She widened her eyes to his face before Karen took off her glasses. To Yuna's surprise and annoyance, Karen's personality switched and she blushed. She quickly walked up to Sasuke and smiled. Oh Sasuke, I didn't know you'd be here, Karen said while Sasuke gave her an even glare. It was only then did he recognize the growing ki behind him, and the Uchiha noticed Yuna twitching violently while her arms were crossed with her finger tapping her arms repeatedly, and Sasuke could see the spiritual death in her eyes telling him to explain himself to her. You still fall for the stupidest shit, Karen. There are other people here, Suigetsu said, and to Yuna's surprise, which still dispelled her anger, Karen quickly put her glasses on and glared at Suigetsu and then looked at Yuna, with the latter giving her best even glare despite everything telling her to rip this girl's head off even if she was one of her master's family members. Ah Suigetsu, you're out of that test too. And Sasuke, who is this girl? Karen asked, narrowing her eyes. Yuna narrowed her eyes back while Sasuke sighed. Enough of that. What has been going on around here? Sasuke asked, and Karen sighed with a shrug of her shoulders. Well, it's a riot. Some of the prisoners learned of Orochimaru's death and they aren't staying quiet, Karen spoke, talking the others through the halls showing the various busted walls of prisoners. Well, it's true. I kill Orochimaru, Sasuke said, and Karen widened her eyes. She turned back to Sasuke in shock of his words. She turned to Suigetsu, who nodded, and Karen shook her head. Why would you do such a thing? She asked, and Sasuke closed his eyes. He was an annoyance. Besides, I need you, Karen. I need you to help me find Itachi, Sasuke said, and Karen blushed while turning her head away. Yuna gritted her teeth and strained herself to keep herself calm. She would hold her tongue, but any more and the unnaturally quiet Yuna would rage. I see. Well, alright then, I suppose, Karen said, and Sasuke nodded. He was, however, looking for one more person. Someone who should be here. It was then that Sasuke's question was answered as a crash came through the door. It slammed Sasuke into the wall, and Yuna widened her eyes while Suigetsu and Karen gasped. Ah, I can finally rage on you. I will kill you all. A person shouted. Everyone watched as Jugo came out with a sick smile across his face, the half of his body already filled with the curse mark. And who is this? Yuna asked, and Karen adjusted her glasses. This was the worst thing that could actually happen to them at the moment. This is Jugo. He was locked up because he's unstable, but it seems that they were unable to keep him anymore, Karen said, and Jugo's laugh continued to ring across the halls before he knew his punch had been caught. Jugo widened his eyes while a wing came out of the wall. Yuna narrowed her eyes while Sasuke came out with half his curse mark flowing as well. That's enough, Sasuke simply said before Jugo cackled. He brought his fist back and was ready to prepare another one. No one can hold me. Only Kimimaro can hold me and he is dead. With him gone my rampages will continue. Jugo shouted and Sasuke just took the situation calmly. I am in need of your help, Jugo. Kimimaro died because of me. I was the person that was supposed to be delivered to Orochimaru, Sasuke said and Jugo widened his eyes. His curse mark receded while Sasuke's Sharingan came over him. I will control your urges. I will become your cage, Sasuke said and Jugo stopped his rampage. He slowly nodded his head. He dropped his arms to his side showing Sasuke that Jugo was in complete submission to him. Well damn Sasuke, you did it so easily, Suigetsu said. Sasuke snorted. We're leaving. Grab your things and get ready. We're going to locate Itachi Uchiha and kill him, Suigetsu asked interrupting Sasuke, and this was what Karen and Jugo thought as well before Sasuke turned around and walked forward. And have him face his responsibilities, Sasuke said while Yuna nodded. The others nodded for a different reason entirely before they all walked off. However, before they could go far, Yuna, much to Karen's shock and surprise, grabbed Sasuke's shoulder, spun him around, and quickly smothered his lips with her own. Sasuke's eyebrow twitched while Karen's jaw dropped to the floor. Suigetsu rolled his eyes over the entire thing while Jugo just didn't try to let it bother him. Granted, yes, Yuna was still thinking over her complete relationship to Sasuke, but she be damned if this Uzumaki girl would come between her and Sasuke. Sheesh, she was just as big a flirt as Fuka, which made Yuna wonder if flirting was an Uzumaki trait. Yuna, rather impulsively, pushed her tongue into Sasuke's mouth and the two Uchihas kept at it for a little while longer and Yuna could admit that it was the best kiss of her life. A kiss of sweetness, happiness, and revenge. Sasuke and Yuna separated and the first Uchiha coughed and straightened himself before walking off trying to think of something else. Meanwhile Yuna turned back to a very shocked Karen and flipped her long black hair. Better try some other guy, she said walking off, and even Suigetsu couldn't resist the urge to laugh. She's got you pegged, Karen. Suigetsu said walking off, and Jugo followed them while Karen slowly, but surely did follow after them as well, grumbling some unintelligible words and cursing her luck at having another woman on the team. Oh, and I'm also an Uchiha, Yuna shouted from the distance, seemingly reading Karen's thoughts. It was then that Karen's eyebrow twitched and she just walked, trying not to let it bother her. Keyword is try. With Naruto and Kushina, next morning. Naruto and Kushina were out in the lone field behind their house and Naruto was drawing one Kushina's hands. Kushina chuckled slightly each time while Naruto sighed. Ka-chan, keep still. I can't complete the seals if you don't stop laughing, Naruto said, and Kushina snickered. It's hee not my fault, Databane. I'm hee ticklish hee, she said, and Naruto's eyes gleamed. He would archive that away for later reference. He certainly wouldn't forget it anytime soon. That's one of those things that just made him love his mother even more than he already did. However, with a little time, Naruto finished and the seals disappeared into Kushina's hands. The redhead Uzumaki didn't feel any different before turning to her son for an explanation. She didn't get it before Naruto helped her to her feet. Alright, Ka-chan. Close your eyes, Naruto said, and Kushina did as instructed. Feel the honsho in your body. Channel it towards your stomach, and then when you feel it centered, then channel it to both your hands and expel it in waves. Your clones had done it and now you just have to put it into practice, Naruto said, and needless to say this, but Kushina was excited. It wasn't every day that you got to create your own jutsu, even less a time-space one. Kushina pushed her honsho down to her stomach. Since becoming Naruto's valve, then her chakra was eliminated as well, and she too was running on honsho as well. She felt it was there, then she just pushed it through her hands. As Naruto had said, Kushina could feel the seals at work ripping the honsho to shreds and then repairing it just as fast, and she saw the white ripples expel from her body. Kukanyugami no Jutsu. Naruto smiled as the white ripples pulsed all around them, and he watched as everything stopped. It was quiet and Kushina opened her eyes. She saw that she had done it perfectly. Kushina smiled in delight as everything stopped moving in front of them. Kushina stood up and smiled triumphantly before grabbing Naruto into a hug. The two Uzumaki didn't keep this hug long, and Kushina continued to walk around. She had 5 minutes to do so anyway. Naruto looked over the water near the pond before he got another idea. Hey Ka-chan, I'm going to try something, Naruto said, and Kushina nodded before she watched the seals on Naruto's body light up. Naruto quickly extended his hands and Kushina widened her eyes. Kukanyugami no Jutsu, Naruto shouted. Kyuubi raised an eyebrow to his jailer. A distorted space creation inside of an already distorted space. Oh boy, if this didn't blow them all to hell, then nothing would. Thankfully Kyuubi was happy to be wrong as Naruto opened his eyes. He looked around and nothing seemed to be happening. Kushina stared at him blankly and Naruto just stared back. I guess it doesn't do any. Naruto paused as a purplish lightning came next to him. Kushina widened her eyes while Naruto did the same. He didn't react in time before a large hole appeared in front of him. Sochi! Kushina shouted and Naruto was pulled into the hole in front of him. Kushina widened her eyes to the sight that had happened in front of her. Naruto was gone. Like gone, she couldn't sense his chakra anyway. She felt alone. Kushina looked around in haste before another hole appeared next to her. Kushina gasped before Naruto stepped out. He fell to the ground and the hole vanished while Naruto gasped. Oh man, what was that? Naruto wondered before he was grabbed by Kushina into a hug. Oh, don't scare me like that. I thought I lost you. What happened? Kushina asked, inspecting her son from head to toe. Naruto wasn't sure for the most part. He had just been in Iwa's territory for a good 2 minutes before he willed himself back to his mother's side. The portal had taken him to where he wanted. I don't know, Ka-chan, but we have to do that again. Naruto shouted and Kushina shook her head, snickering at the audacity of her son. However, 5 minutes were over for them both as time resumed for them. Everything started to move for them both before Naruto and Kushina turned to see a small lightning break in the air. It just stayed there and Naruto reached out his hand. He touched it and immediately the lightning faded into his body. Naruto took a sharp breath before he smiled. It just gave him some information. Whatever it was, Naruto just held out his hand. Jikuyugami no Jutsu, time-space distortion technique, Naruto shouted and a large lightning appeared in front of him and Kushina. The redhead stepped back unconsciously and the lightning grew harder and louder before a hole appeared in front of Naruto. The blonde grinned like mad. Ka-chan, this is the true form of the Kukanyugami. I just found it. The Jikuyugami no Jutsu. This is the completed form to the time-space jutsu, Naruto said and he walked through it. He had imagined himself going to. Kushina watched as Naruto walked through and the hole disappeared. It left her in the field for about 3 minutes before it came back and Naruto walked out as he dusted himself off from sand that had gotten on his hair. Naruto grinned and gave his mother a thumbs up. I went all the way to Sunagakur, Ka-chan. Naruto said and Kushina just fell to the ground. She really did have troublesome son, but betraying her thoughts was her curiosity. It reminded her of the time of distorted space that could only come from something like Minato's Horizon. Still, that's way too slow to make. I have to increase the time to do it, Naruto said walking back to the house. Kushina walked after him. They were going to be busy for a few days. Konoha, 3 days later. Shikamaru, Ino and Choji were gathered around in front of the gates of Konoha. The Ino-Shika-Cho trio had their bags right on their backs. Are you guys ready? Shikamaru asked and the 2 other teammates nodded their heads. They couldn't rest well with it. They had to allow Asuma to rest in peace. They had to find those guys and end their lives even if it meant that they wouldn't be coming back themselves. Yeah, we're ready, Ino said and Shikamaru nodded his head. They all quickly walked up to the gates before they heard a voice. And where do you think you're going? Ino, Shikamaru and Choji did a sharp turn left and right before looking up to see Kakashi and Makoto looking at them both. Shikamaru cursed underneath his breath before Kakashi and Makoto jumped down. Do you know the consequences of leaving the village? Makoto asked and everyone flinched from her tone, but they nonetheless nodded and Kakashi sighed. Grudges aren't suitable for shinobi. You're being children, he told them while Ino and Choji held their heads down. Shikamaru sighed and dropped his bag before Kakashi and Makoto glanced to each other and nodded. They both smiled and turned around. It's alright. We knew you'd do something like this. So we put in a request for the mission to Tsunade. We're to locate those 2 if they're still in Hai no Kuni. You will be coming with us, Kakashi said and the others widened their eyes while Makoto nodded. They nodded hesitantly and the 2 Hinoken members quickly rushed off in the dawn of morning while Team 10 quickly followed them out. Morning. Hidan and Kakuzu were walking through a ruined piece of land after dealing with Asuma Sarutobi. It had been a good day for Hidan and nothing could get him down. Not even Kakuzu and the clattering sounds of money in his pouches. It did piss Hidan off, but not enough to keep the stupid smile from coming to his face. And what's got you in such a good mood? Kakuzu asked and Hidan just snorted. What's not to be happy about? I got to sacrifice another fool. You got your stupid money for killing him and we haven't seen hide nor fucking hair of Konoha. I guess that they really are chickens after all, Hidan said while Kakuzu just snorted. He didn't even really care at the moment and the two just continued to walk. Well, I don't think we're chickens. Just had to get ourselves organized. The two turned around fast only to dodge a fireball to their faces. Hidan jumped to the right and Kakuzu to the left and both landed on their feet. Oi, what the fuck is wrong with you? Hidan shouted while Kakuzu narrowed his eyes. Kakashi smiled as he came out through the clearing. Kakashi and the others didn't have to try hard to find these guys. After all, they weren't too hard to spot with those cloaks on. Kakashi Hatake, S-rank nin of Konohagakure. It seems that I will be making another big profit, Kakuzu said while Kakashi narrowed his eyes. Are you fucking stupid? You actually wanted to challenge us alone? Hidan asked, but Kakashi just shook his head. Immediately Makoto swooped down with a flutter of her scarf in the wind. Her long sword strapped to her back while she glared at Hidan. No, he has help, she said and then Team 10 proceeded to come down and do the same. They all glared at Hidan and Kakuzu while the former chuckled. Oh, this promises to be great. Jashin-sama, please grant your servant a lovely kill today, Hidan spoke while Shikamaru and the others glared. Alright, they are both S-ranked criminals. Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, you're on standby until we give you the signal. Shikamaru, you want to prove yourself right? Kakashi asked and Shikamaru nodded his head. For Asuma, he wanted to get that Hidan guy alone and dispose of him himself. Alright then, Makoto and I will be creating the distraction. All of you move when we give you the signal, Kakashi said while Makoto glanced to her partner. You'd better activate it while you have the chance, Kakashi. They aren't going to give you the chance to do it in battle, Makoto advised and Kakashi agreed. He quickly took a hold of his scarf and pulled a portion of it off his eye, revealing his Sharingan. Makoto did the same as her eyes flashed red as well. The two Hinoken members drew their swords while Kakuzu smirked. He unbuttoned his cloak and threw it to the ground while Hidan stood next to him. 4 hearts appeared on Kakuzu's back before they shot out and each mask took the form of a different animal-shaped creature or so Kakashi and Makoto tried to identify. Don't let your guard down, Hidan, Kakuzu told him and Hidan just snickered as he swirled his scythe around his neck. What do those masks do? Kakashi asked, but Makoto wasn't sure. However, both were about to find out as Hidan charged at Kakashi. His speed was fast to Team 10, but faster than him was Makoto, who clashed her sword to his side. Bitch, don't get in my way, Hidan shouted while the sparks flew from their weapons. Makoto kicked Hidan back away from her partner while Kakashi passed her and quickly ran towards Kakuzu, trusting that Makoto would be fine. Coming for me, are you? Very good, Kakuzu said aloud while Kakashi jumped in the air. His blade coursed with Raiden chakra before he slammed it into the ground. Kakuzu backflipped away from the intended strike, but he didn't count on Kakashi's speed as the Hinoken member quickly got up in his face. Kakashi let out a kick, but Kakuzu blocked it and sent a punch the Sharingan wielder's way. Kakashi dropped away from it before he noticed the threaded demons around him swirling. Kakashi jumped away from one, but the other slammed him in the chest, knocking him away from Kakuzu. Makoto saw the action, but she couldn't move to help Kakashi at the moment. She didn't dare try either. Wanna help him, don't you? Hidan asked with a snicker, and while Makoto didn't show it, that smirk pissed her off. I'll just focus on you, she said, and suddenly her sword quickly blazed in fire over Hidan's side before the fire intensified her gaze. Hidan had to cover his eyes, and that was his mistake as Makoto launched her sword up, which sent Hidan's side in the air over his body. Makoto then adjusted her body and placed her blade near Hidan's stomach, ready for the cut until she did a sharp roll across the ground to dodge 3 wind bullets. What? Makoto said as she saw the wind kanji demon flying overhead. She cursed while Hidan ran up to her and tried to deliver a punch, which he did. Makoto was sent flying across the field and slammed into a decaying tree, and then she was pinned by Hidan's side. Team 10 growled while Hidan smiled. Time to be sacrificed, he said before he noticed Makoto smile. She just shook her head and poofed out, replacing herself with a log while Hidan growled. Damn bitch, Hidan shouted at the top of his voice before he heard a sharp whistle. That's the signal, Shikamaru shouted as he, Ino and Choji moved into the field. Shikamaru quickly jumped into the air while Makoto swiftly dashed away from Hidan. The Akatsuki member gasped as she quickly ran for Kakashi to assist him, and Hidan followed her before Ino and Choji blocked him. You're caught. Kajmain success, Shikamaru said as he let out a punch that Hidan caught easily, but with a kick Shikamaru pulled his hand back and behind him was the two individual shadows that had connected themselves to each other. Shikamaru and Hidan landed at the same time while he gave a thumbs up to Ino and Choji. Go Shikamaru, we've got things covered here. Just don't die on us. It's not what Asuma-sensei would want, Choji said, and Shikamaru smirked with a sharp nod of his head. He then quickly ran away into the forest near the clearing with Hidan having no choice but to follow him, and the two quickly disappeared into the shrubbery. Asuma was right behind him and sighed with a shake of his head. This guy is going to get himself killed one of these days for doing this, but that's why I like him, Asuma said with a smile on his face as he floated after Shikamaru. With Tsunade, the Godime Hokage sighed as she tapped her finger impatiently. She couldn't believe that she just sent them after the Akatsuki in the hopes that they would be found. Maybe she just had a soft spot for the brats, but that didn't stop her concern from approaching on her face. Shizune, summon Naruto and Kushina right now. Tsunade ordered, and Shizune, surprised at her master's tone, quickly ran off to go and find Naruto and Kushina. Tsunade's finger intertwined together, and in less than 10 minutes, Naruto and Kushina appeared from the ceiling and into the ground. Tsunade noticed something different about them, Naruto the most. The blonde didn't have his Hinoken clothes on. No, he had a white t-shirt and black jeans, but on his hands seemed to be two seals that Tsunade couldn't understand what they meant. Right next around his neck was a necklace right next to the one that she had given him. In contrast to her green one, this one was red with a certain amount of black added to it. She'd have to ask about that later. Next to him was his mother. She had her Hinoken clothes on, but on Kushina's left hand was a single seal, and underneath her clothes on her stomach was another little seal that Tsunade couldn't see. You call Ba-chan? Naruto asked, snapping Tsunade out of her stupor. She then nodded and stood up. Early this morning I gave Kakashi, Makoto and Team 10 a mission. They were to hunt down the two Akatsuki members who murdered Asuma. It's been quite a while since that time. Naruto and Kushina, you both are to back them up in any way that you can, Tsunade said, and Naruto narrowed his eyes while a smile graced his lips. Kushina smiled as well, and Tsunade wondered if this was the right choice. She didn't know why, but she could just see the shinigami behind the both of them before they saluted her and vanished out of sight to go and get ready. With Naruto and Kushina having gotten dressed, Naruto smiled and held out his hand. Jikuyugami no Jutsu, Naruto shouted before he grabbed his mother's waist. Naruto was able to pinpoint Kakashi's chakra signature and Makoto's Honsho before the two Uzumaki vanished a large portal in an instant. With Kakashi and Makoto. Raw! Kakashi shouted as he slammed his Raiden-filled sword through Kakuzu's body. He effectively crushed the one with the lightning mask while Kakuzu growled. Kakashi smirked at the accomplishment while Makoto blocked two of the others. Kakuzu jumped away from Kakashi and took out a kunai while Kakuzu did three hand signs. Kaden. Zukoku, fire release. Intelligent hard work, he shouted, and a small fire came across the ground before it erupted in a firestorm that bursted in a wide area. He has fire too, Kakashi thought to himself before he quickly ducked behind a tree. Makoto followed him and so did Ino and Choji. Oh man, this guy is going to be tough, Ino said before the fire settled down. Kakashi huffed and so did Makoto. The two glanced to each other and nodded before they flew out of their hiding spots and charged at Kakuzu. The Akatsuki treasurer smirked as one of his demons flew in front of Kakashi. The Jonin narrowed his eyes and drew his blade back. Reikiri. Josen Reiha, lightning edge. Splitting lightning blade, Kakashi shouted as a large light appeared from his blade. He quickly slashed at the demon in front of him and three lightning waves escaped from his sword as one cut the demon in half and the other two made their ways towards Kakuzu. Kakuzu narrowed his eyes as each one converged on him in an explosion. The dust picked up around them while Kakashi and Makoto landed on the ground. Do you sense him? Kakashi asked and Makoto shook her head. Her Sharingan was working overtime before she widened her eyes and turned around. Choji-san, block! Makoto shouted and Choji did so only for a kick to hit him and send him flying into a tree. Choji coughed before Kakuzu appeared in front of him again and blasted him further through the tree and into the ground. Kakashi and Makoto cursed as they charged back at Kakuzu. They had to put an end to this. Kaden, Karyu Enden no Jutsu, Makoto shouted and sent a large wave of fire across the fire towards Kakuzu. Seeing the incoming fire upon his person, Kakuzu quickly used his hands and held up a few hand signs. Sweden, Sujinheki, he said, and a large array of water shot up and blocked the fire, causing a mist to flow over the field. Kakashi narrowed his eyes, as did Makoto. They could still see Kakuzu in there, as he didn't know the silent killing, but they weren't experts of it either, so these wasn't much for them to go on. Kakashi, go and I will back you up. Now, Makoto shouted, and Kakashi quickly jumped forward. He quickly charged at Kakuzu and the two quickly exchanged blows in the mist. The two clashes could be heard from inside the mist while Makoto leaned against a tree. She then placed her hand on the ground and smiled. Honsho, Yamagiri no Kan, power of life. Resurrecting the fire, Makoto shouted, and a large trail of Honsho ran across the ground and circled around the spot where Kakashi and Kakuzu were. Makoto then slammed the ground and shouted, Kakashi, move. Makoto shouted and Kakashi did so. He quickly jumped back away from Kakuzu and a heavy fire came over the fire while Kakashi widened his eyes. What is that? It's nothing like the Amaterasu flames that I've seen, Kakashi said. Makoto grouped up with him and she noticed that Kakashi's clothes were a little torn and he looked a little ragged. Makoto held him before they noticed a white ball in Kakuzu's hand. He was still inside the fire, but he just smirked and raised his hand. Futon, Atsugai, wind release. Pressure damage, he shouted, and the ball of wind compressed itself before it quickly was released from the high density and sent across the entire field. Kakashi and Makoto cursed as it blew the white flames away, and Kakuzu did another hand sign. One that they knew would be very bad. Kaden, Zukoku, Kakuzu yelled, and his fire demon sent the fire into the wind. Both mixed and a large fire blasted through the fields, destroying everything in its path. Even the water that had been used by Kakuzu previously. Kakashi and Makoto managed to dodge the intense flames while Kakuzu spoke again. You might have dodged it well, but your time is up. I'm impressed with you, intelligence copy ninja, Kakuzu yelled while Kakashi huffed. He could feel the Sharingan sapping his chakra that he wanted to conserve. Kakashi, recover your chakra. I will go out and take him, Makoto said while Kakashi narrowed his eyes. Can we afford that? He asked, and Makoto smiled. Hey, I'm the only one with the Honsho in this group. I can't die, and trust me. You aren't ready to die just yet, Makoto said, standing to her feet. She quickly stared Kakuzu down and was ready to charge before everyone was surprised by the large hole that came out of nowhere. Kakuzu narrowed his eyes before a foot came out and touched the earth. The person came out while Kakashi and Makoto, Choji and Ino, were all surprised as Naruto and Kushina dropped to the ground. Kushina, Naruto, Kakashi said while the two Uzumaki turned around. Both could see the light injuries on Makoto and Kakashi's person. Both Hinokan members then turned around to seeing Kakuzu glaring at them both. So that's who we're dealing with, Naruto said while Kushina glared. The two Uzumaki could see the Akatsuki member smirked and folded his arms over his chest. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki, I didn't think that you would try and find us on your own. How pleasant. We will be taking you as well, Kakuzu said, however that all ended as he met Naruto's eyes. The eyes of pure death in them. Everything in Kakuzu's being told him that this body was the harbinger of death. He was the one who could kill you just with a flick of his sword. This kid had to die. Akatsuki or not, but Kakuzu knew that if he didn't kill Naruto then the rest of Akatsuki was doomed. The earth demon charged at them both, and before Kakashi or Makoto could tell them to react, Kushina snapped her fingers and everyone saw the earth demon fall to the ground in tons of pieces. Naruto smirked while Kakuzu widened his eyes. What was that? How did it fall so easily? He thought while Naruto snickered. He turned to the source of the noise and looked at his mother. You didn't have to use the new method so readily, Naruto said while Kushina shrugged her shoulders. Everyone else raised an eyebrow while they noticed the seal on Kushina's hands. Those few days that they had to themselves, Naruto and Kushina had spent the time working with the Kukanyugami as well as the Jikuyugami. They had discovered that the Jikuyugami could teleport them anywhere that they wanted so long as they thought it. Also by sending the perfect amount of Honsho into their fingertips and then snapping, then the snap would release the waves of Honsho around everyone while Kushina could strike if she wanted. It was how she defeated the demons so fast. No one, not even Makoto or Kakashi with their Sharingan, could see her if her did this. However, like Naruto, she couldn't use the Kukanyugami more than 3 times a day. Now the Jikuyugami, well, that would just have to be a surprise for later. Well, it's not my fault that I discovered this method first, Databane, Kushina said while Naruto's eyebrow twitched. He just sighed and shook his head before turning around. Well then, Ka-chan, would you mind if I dealt with this? I'd like to show the results of our training, Naruto said, and Kushina thought it over. Then she just nodded and backed away. Kushina, what are you doing? You can't let Shikan-sama do this alone, Makoto said, but Kushina just kept the smile plastered on her face. Kakashi watched Naruto walk forward, and so did Ino and Choji. Both Chunin wondered what their fellow comrade could do when they could do nothing. Well, looks like I get to beat you, Naruto said, and Kakuzu narrowed his eyes. It won't be that simple, Kyuubi Jinchuriki, he said, and Naruto watched as the 2 demons in the air came together and became a part of Kakuzu's body. Jongu, Earth, Grudge, Fear, Kakuzu shouted as threads came together around his body and bursted in all directions. The fire and wind demons appeared at the sides of his neck while Naruto smiled. Naruto quickly drew his sword. He took his mother's stance before he blurred out of sight. The blonde quickly slashed at one of Kakuzu's threads in a burst of speed, making the Akatsuki member widen his eyes to the sudden slash before he swept one forward. Naruto jumped over it and did a hand sign. Futon. Daitapa, Naruto shouted, and a fierce wind slammed into Kakuzu's body, sending the Akatsuki member back slightly. Kaden. Zukoku, Kakuzu shouted as his wind and fire demons' techniques came together in a ferocious fire towards Naruto. The blonde raised his sword over his head and closed his eyes before slashing it down. The fire separated and dispelled into nothingness, making Kakuzu widen his eyes as Naruto spoke. Fire is life. All life ends at some point. My blade is able to take that life, Naruto said, and Kakuzu quickly grew a little agitated at being underestimated against Naruto. The sent a tendril at the blonde, and Naruto quickly rolled to the side while he crossed his fingers. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto shouted as 4 clones came in front of him. Naruto closed his eyes and made his Rasengan before he added his Futon chakra to it. Everyone heard the loud screeching through the field as Ino and Choji covered their ears. Futon, Rasenshuriken, Naruto shouted before his clones quickly raced through, masking Naruto's true presence between them. Kakuzu looked at them all, but he lost sight of the real Naruto before 3 clones came at him. Kakuzu outstretched his hands at 2 and a thread tendril slammed into another. Fire and wind dominated the 2 clones to the side as the dispelled. Was that all of them? Kakuzu thought to himself before he still heard the swirling. Naruto quickly moved in close to him and grinned. Say goodbye, he said as Kakuzu gasped and closed his eyes. Naruto was mere inches from his face before the blonde cursed before it dissipated. Damn it, I thought I worked out that problem, Naruto thought to himself before he was slammed by a tendril and sent crashing into the ground. Kushina narrowed her eyes while Naruto landed in front of her. What happened? She asked, kneeling down, and Naruto coughed. I couldn't hold the technique from the repeated uses of the time-space ninjutsu today. It was too unstable, but don't worry, Ka-chan, I've got something even more fun to try, Naruto said, and Kushina nodded her head while Naruto got to his feet. Baka, are you going to let us help you now? Ino asked while Naruto dusted off his clothes. He glanced back at Ino, and the blonde girl could see the coldness in his eyes and flinched before Naruto smiled. Oh no, there are lots of other ways that I can do this, Datbeo, Naruto said to her and quickly continued in the fight. With Yugao. The ex-Anbu captain was currently running through the trees back to Uzushiogakure for some peace and relaxation. She couldn't wait to finally see the others, maybe catch up on some reading and then take another crack at the bingo book. She had taken her share of the money from the Hinokin account and would use it to upgrade her sword. That's what she was thinking until a red blur passed her. Kushina, Yugao asked in thought before she turned around. She quickly raced through the trees to catch up to the person who had been huffing for a little bit before Yugao grabbed her shoulder. Fuka-san, what are you doing out here? Yugao asked, and Fuka slightly panted before brushing some sweat from her face. She grabbed Yugao's shoulders and huffed a little more. Where is Naruto-kun? Fuka asked in haste, and Yugao raised an eyebrow. He's back in the village. What's the problem? She asked, and Fuka's face scrunched up into a scowl. Yuri was captured by Akatsuki. Everyone has decided to go and look for her and they left Uzushiogakur together. I was the one who was sent to tell Naruto-kun and you guys, Fuka said while Yugao widened her eyes. She quickly turned around and ran for Konoha along with Fuka to go and spill the news. With Naruto. Naruto quickly ran at Kakuzu one more time while the man snickered. It's no use. Kaden. Zukoku, Kakuzu shouted while Naruto quickly opened his hand and held up a hand sign. Say hello to Uzumaki Naruto's first time-space ninjutsu move. Jikuyugami no Jutsu, time-space distortion technique, Naruto shouted and in an instant Kakashi and Makoto widened their eyes while Kushina smirked. The purplish portal appeared in front of Naruto and the fire quickly raced through that portal and vanished. Kakuzu was now utterly confused to the portal in front of him before it closed as Naruto balled his fist. He then smirked and held up another hand. Right behind Kakuzu came another portal and the fire raced out and slammed him in the back, burning him. Kakuzu winced from the fire before he saw the ground under him raise up in chains. The chains grabbed Kakuzu and hoisted him into the air. Kakuzu looked at Naruto and the blonde held another Rasenshuriken in his hands. He stepped through the portal and watched it close while everyone waited hastily. Above Kakuzu, Naruto dove out and shouted. Futon, Rasenshuriken, Naruto shouted as he slammed the Rasenshuriken into Kakuzu's body. The blast sent him flying into the ground before he was crushed by the weight of the exploding ball on his body. He could feel his cells being ripped apart at the seams as wind blades attacked his chakra circulatory system. Kakuzu yelled out his pain while Kakashi was watching it all go down. I can't even count the number of wind blades that are in that technique with my Sharingan, Kakashi thought to himself. Soon the blast stopped and Kakuzu dropped to the ground. Naruto looked at his dead body and gripped his sword tightly. Knowing what he was about to do, Kakashi, Makoto and Kushina turned to Ino and Choji who were left in awe. Ino, Choji, go and check on Shikamaru. He's been gone a long time, Kakashi ordered and the two nodded their heads before racing off. Naruto gave a silent nod of thanks that Kakashi returned while he drew blood over his seal. Kuchio's no jutsu, Naruto said and Shin appeared behind him. The blonde activated his Honsho and looked up to see Kakuzu shivering under his gaze. Not even money can save you from the wrath of the Shinigami, Naruto said while Kakuzu backed away. The spirits all grabbed his arms and pushed him towards their summoner. You are a perversion of life. You who try to cheat death. You who disrespects Shin's laws and go against his mindset. Your soul is mine, Naruto said as he slashed Kakuzu in half. The man yelled out as he faded, but then he was grabbed by Shin and hoisted into the air. All life ends at some point. You have more than overstayed your pitiful existence. Now you shall suffer the consequences. He and Kakuzu's astral form fell into Shin's mouth and he would rest in the stomach of the Shinigami, never to be seen again. Naruto closed his eyes and smiled. How many people can I revive with him? Naruto asked while Shin thought it over. 2 people for him, he said and Naruto nodded his head before he saw the spirit of Asuma coming over to him in all smiles. Naruto raised an eyebrow before Asuma gave him a thumbs up in the rundown. Flashback. Shikamaru continued to run through the forest before he made a quick stop. He turned around and Hidan glared at him as the shadow around his faded. So you think you've won? You've done nothing, but kill yourself. Hidan shouted before he grabbed his scythe and charged at Shikamaru. You killed Asuma-sensei, Shikamaru stated coldly while Hidan smirked. The best kill I had thus far, he said and Shikamaru glared before he backflipped away from Hidan's scythe a little too late as it grazed his side. Hidan smirked at the drop of blood on his scythe before his skin turned black and a red circle appeared underneath his feet. Now then, let's go to heaven together. He shouted as he was ready to stab himself before he heard Shikamaru speak. Kage Nui no Jutsu, shadow sewing technique, Shikamaru shouted and thousands of shadows underneath his feet came up and caught Hidan's arms and legs before they wrapped him in hundreds of explosion tags and trapped his body. Shikamaru held up Asuma's lighter and sighed. Asuma smiled at the act and closed his eyes. He didn't know shit about Honsho, but if he could just do a little then it would be alright. Asuma channeled his Honsho to his body and tapped Shikamaru's shoulder making the Chunin genius turn his head to the right to see Asuma smirking at him. He must have lost it, but the smile on Asuma's face was reassuring before the Jonin faded from his view. I will protect the king. Who is the king? The children of Konoha, the next generation. It's the power to protect something important. That's the will of fire, Shikamaru said as he tossed the lighter towards Hidan. The flames came closer and Hidan's eyes showed terror before he exploded while Shikamaru stared at him with his hand standing out. The explosion subsided and Shikamaru noticed tons of Hidan's body on the ground. I can't be kill you fool. I won't die. I'll live on forever. Hidan shouted while Shikamaru just nodded and made a hole in the ground. He buried Hidan inside and stood up. Then you'll be alive without anyone to hear you, Shikamaru said as he walked off. Flashback over. Naruto smiled and walked towards the trees while Ino, Shikamaru and Choji came out. The blonde looked at Shikamaru and the two high-fived each other and everyone else gave a thumbs up. Tired? Naruto asked and Shikamaru rolled his eyes with a smile on his face. It was all troublesome, he said walking away and Naruto disappeared into the woods. He found the damaged spot of earth and quickly dug Hidan up out of the ground. Damn it all. When I find that asshole I'm going to make him rot in the... Hidan trailed off with a cough before he noticed Naruto's sword above his head. You who kill for pleasure. You who sacrifice to your cult god. You who wish to live eternally from Shin. You fear death and all it holds. Now it is the only thing that will accept you. May you take responsibility for your actions against Shin with your soul. Naruto shouted as he slammed his sword into Hidan's head. He then pulled out his sword and Naruto beckoned for Shin to appear before him. So Jashin, you abandoned another follower allowing me to take him. It's no wonder that you can't hold a summoner. Such a fool, Shin said before he grabbed a screaming Hidan. No, no. Let me go you sack of shit. Hidan shouted while Shin glared. Rest in the pits of hell where your kind belong, he said and opened his mouth. Shin consumed Hidan who shouted out indecencies before he was gone. Shin closed his mouth and Naruto smiled. How much for that one? The same. It is two, Shin said and Naruto nodded his head. That was 4 people that he could bring back if he so wished. Other than Tayuya, none of his summons desired to be revived. They had enjoyed their lives and didn't want anything more. Now they just wanted to help their new master as well as they could. Naruto decided to think about it later. Ready to go back? Kushina asked and Naruto sighed with a tired smile. Yep, besides, I can't wait to see Yuri-chan and see how strong she's gotten, Naruto said and Kushina nodded her head as the two left the destroyed field behind along with the rest of their friends. A little later, Namikaze house. Naruto widened his eyes and slammed the table in utter anger as his honcho bursted from his body. Kushina widened her eyes as her seals lit up dangerously while Yugao and Fuka flinched. Wanna repeat that? Naruto asked visibly trembling angrily while Fuka sweated from the feeling of death upon her person. Naruto, first we need you to calm down, Yugao said before Naruto glared hard at her. Yugao flinched from the stare while Fuka told him. She had just got to him about 2 hours after his fight. Naruto was looking forward to relaxing as was Kushina with dinner. Imagine them ready to eat when Yugao and Fuka come through the door. Naruto-kun, Yuri was captured by Akatsuki. They came to Uzushiogakure and took her from us while we were distracted. We have no idea where she is, Fuka said and Naruto growled as the seals on his body and near his Kyuubi seal started to light up. Even Kyuubi was forced to recognize this fearsome power. He already held the blonde in high regard for that time-stopping ninjutsu and the Jikuyugami just topped that, but this power just felt so much like death that even Kyuubi didn't like it. Naruto growled and balled his fists enough to make them bleed. Whoever took her I will find them. I will drag their souls to Shin through hell. You don't fucking mess with Naruto Uzumaki's family and get away with it. Don't worry Yuri-chan, I will find you. Chapter 29. Namikaze house. What do you mean I can't go? Naruto asked heatedly while Kushina folded her arms and stared at her son. The blonde was all the more ready to burst out of the door and charge in any given direction if it gave him even the slightest hint to Yuri's whereabouts. He had grabbed his sword, put on his clothes, and almost made it to the door before Kushina stopped him. It was one of the very times that Naruto knew that the glare she was sending him wasn't one as his lover, but as his mother. He had to admit, even in a hurry or trouble, his mother's face was still very beautiful. Sochi, you have just been through a fight with not one but 2 Akatsuki members. Granted the second one you didn't really fight, but that is beside the point. We trained all day today and yesterday. You have used the Jikuyugami twice today and that costs as much Honsho as the Kukanyugami, if not more. You don't have the Honsho to keep going. Just because you can't die doesn't mean that you can get your ass handed to you and walk into the opponent's pace. You will stay here for the rest of today and tomorrow. Once that's over then you can follow as fast as you like, but I will be going. Do I make myself clear? Kushina asked and Naruto grumbled. Due to his use of the Kukanyugami and the Jikuyugami techniques he had been depleting his reserves of Honsho and making them bigger. He didn't have that much, just enough for a time stop for 5 minutes at the most. Deep down, he knew his mother was right. Naruto and Kushina stared at each other evenly while Fuka felt that she could just cut the tension with a kunai. Her eyes darted left and right between her family before she noticed Naruto break the stare with his mother, march up the stairs, and slam his door shut, obviously pissed off. Kushina sighed and shook her head before she turned back to Fuka and patted her shoulder. Mind leading me to the others? Kushina asked and Fuka nodded her head. Sure, but what about Naruto? How can you be sure that he won't leave? Fuka asked and Kushina shrugged her shoulders. She looked up at the stairs before another sigh escaped her lips. Because if he truly loves me then he will listen to my request. Despite making it sound like an order, he and I realized it to be a request. He had accepted, not in the way that I thought, but he did. Don't worry about him. Now then take me to them immediately, Databane, Kushina said and Fuka nodded as the two Uzumaki women opened the door and closed it. Fuka dashed off through the trees and so did Kushina as they made their way to the others. Thanks to her Hinokan license, then Kushina was able to leave Konoha anytime she wanted with anyone so long as they were informed later. Kushina would file the report later. The two disappeared from view with only the Namikaze house staying within Kushina's eye vision before she turned her head forward and continued to race off. With Naruto. Naruto grumbled as he kicked off his shoes, took off his Hinokan clothes and placed his sword near his side of the master bed. The blonde then walked into the shower and, instead of hot, let cold water run over his body. His hair fell down as the water dripped, chilling his body and his anger, but not as much as he would have liked. His reserves were large. Hell, they were larger than Kakashi's and Tsunade's combined, and that only added to the complexity and raw power of the Honsho, but it seemed that his body wasn't able to sustain as much of it as he liked. For Naruto, his Honsho was 30x more powerful than chakra and 10x more powerful than Yuki. He didn't use chakra anymore, or rather he couldn't. He had to stay with this spiritual energy. The energy build-up of too much Honsho was like Kyuubi's chakra. It would overpower him, and if he didn't keep it in check then it would overrun his soul, and his muscles were sort of fatigued at the moment. If only because he had been sparring with his mother before they had their mission. Kuso, Naruto said to himself before he leaned against the wall. He slid down and landed on the floor, just content with letting the water run down his body. You're acting childish, Kyuubi said, putting its own sense into the situation. Naruto just snorted and rolled his eyes. Oh, trust me, I know, but I can't fucking help it. I want to save Yuri, but there is nothing I can do. I could send Dan, Pakura, Kimimaro, Fujikaze and Tayuya, but by the time that they get back then I will be more than ready to search on my own. Seems like a moot point. Besides, because of Shin I have my mother's chakra locked in place. I can just use the Jikuyugami to catch up to her if need be, Naruto responded, and he heard the fox snort inside its cage before Naruto held his head back and chuckled. You know, lately you've been rather nice. It's never any human. I will sink my fangs into you, or I will loan you my chakra if you prove your worth. You know, shit like that. Are we best buddies now? Naruto asked and Kyuubi rolled its eyes. Oh, trust me, when I get out of here I will try to bite your head off. It still sickens me, but not as much to an extent. Don't ask me about this shit. We're allies, nothing more than that. Don't get all chummy with me, Kyuubi responded, and Naruto couldn't resist the urge to crack a smile. He knew that Kyuubi saw him as a friend, but would never admit it even if it meant death to him. Understood. When you do try to escape then I will just use Shin and have you sealed right back in there, Naruto said, and he heard Kyuubi growl before going silent. The blonde snorted before he heard giggling. He raised an eyebrow and allowed his Honsho to activate in his eyes. Naruto looked up and his eyebrow twitched. You've got to be kidding me, Naruto said to himself as he saw female spirits blushing at his body. They seemed to be whispering to themselves and pointing at him, and before long the blonde rolled his eyes and hopped to his feet. The spirits jumped at the sudden action before Naruto stopped the shower, grabbed a towel, and wrapped it around his waist. "No more eye candy, ladies," Naruto said with a smirk before he leaned against the bed and pulled out a fuinjutsu scroll. He read along its lines for a little while before he pulled his pants close to him and reached inside one of their pockets. He took the jewel which contained the Sanbi's yang chakra and looked at it. The jewel was already beginning to show signs of cracking. They were small, but they were there. Naruto stared at it for a little while and sighed. "I wouldn't recommend it. Having just one of us is enough. Not even you humans can handle two at the same time. You would go insane and your body would be too easy to manipulate. Also, I am not sharing a space with that damn turtle." Kyuubi shouted and Naruto just chuckled and shook his head as he stood to his feet. He placed the jewel on the counter and walked off into the middle of the fields outside. No, he wasn't going to run off. He had other training that had to be done anyway. "Ready, partner?" Naruto asked and Kyuubi rolled his eyes. "Shut up and just do it. Also, try not to." "No, never mind." Kyuubi trailed off and Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Try not to what?" Naruto asked, cocking his head to the side in confusion. Kyuubi just rumbled and sighed while he placed a furry claw over his head and scratched it. "I was going to say, try not to die, but that's not necessary now, is it?" Kyuubi asked and Naruto's response was to just shrug his shoulders. "I suppose not. Well, here we go." Naruto shouted as his body blazed in red chakra. The Kyuubi cloak appeared around him as did three of its tails. Naruto growled lowly before the fourth tail came. He noticed that the changes were starting to take place. His body grew dark red and the skin peeled off his body. I'm not losing it like I did with Ero-Sennin and Ka-san. I wonder if this is Kyuubi or Shin, Naruto thought to himself before he decided to go further. No doubt he would have Anbu and Jonin on his ass, but he needed to get this done. He was well adept with Shin, but not with Kyuubi. At least not without his faults he wasn't. Naruto had decided to try and go further than 3 tails and see if he could set the goal for at least 5 or 6. 7 through 9 were a little much to go by. Naruto shouted, but he was still in more than enough control. His roar had scared the nearby creatures, but he couldn't care about them at the moment. His claws just scratched the ground and another tail appeared. Kyuubi, this feels good. Better than good. Oh, I've got to use this more often. Now I see why you wanted me to use this chakra so badly, Naruto said mentally and Kyuubi just snorted. Yeah, whatever you say, brat. Just watch that. Naruto raised his clawed hand into the air and with a roar brought it down, causing a large explosion across the forest. It rumbled through the trees, blowing them away while Naruto cackled. Power. Ah, he never listens to me. Wait, this is news to me. Why? Kyuubi thought to itself before shrugging and falling asleep. The blonde would know it soon enough. With Sasuke, half a day later. Sasuke opened his eyes to the sun and turned his head. He could see that Yuna was gone from her side of the tent that they had been sleeping in. Karen had slept alone in her own tent while Suigetsu slept with Jugo. Sasuke wanted them all well rested, but he knew that he could divert Suigetsu's attention from Zabuza's sword forever. One way or the other he would have to get Suigetsu to fight Zabuza or something like that. Great, where did she run off to? Sasuke wondered before he got up and exited the tent. He placed on his clothes and strapped his sword to his waist. Since he was Team Hubby's leader, then he had to keep his tabs on everyone that was with him, especially Yuna. He wouldn't lose another Uchiha like that ever again. Sasuke jumped up to the trees and he looked left and right. He couldn't feel Yuna's signature and that worried him slightly. The brunette Uchiha raced through the forest of trees for about half an hour before his searching finally decided to bear fruit. He had felt Yuna's signature in a large plain. Sasuke raced off and in no time he found Yuna sitting on a rock out in the open. She was merely looking out at the sky, letting the wind blow her long hair up and down. Sasuke felt content to watch her for a little while as he just stayed in a tree. By this time, Yuna knew that Sasuke was watching her and just gently placed a hand to her hair and smiled. Whether Sasuke was shy or anxious, she wasn't sure. I didn't mean to wander off. I just thought I'd look around, she said, alerting him, and Sasuke narrowed his eyes before he jumped down, realizing that the gig was up. For what? He asked, and Yuna just shrugged her shoulders. She patted the rock next to her, telling Sasuke to give her his company. Sasuke just sat down next to her and Yuna seemed content as she laid her head on his lap. The two Uchiha stayed like that for a bit before Yuna smiled. You really have changed. It's been so long. I remember you growing up. I would pop up every now and then to see you as I float around. You cried in your sleep and I would just stay there all night sleeping next to you. It was the most comforting times of my life, Yuna said, and Sasuke just stayed silent. I never had a romantic relationship before, but I feel that you are the only one that I will absolutely be close to other than my mother. So for that I say thanks, Sasuke responded, and Yuna raised an eyebrow before snickering. Not really romantic, but hell, I'll take it over anything else, she said as she leaned up and quickly gave Sasuke a kiss before she jumped to her feet and landed on the ground. Well then, shall we go back? She asked, and Sasuke nodded. The two Uchiha continued to walk before Sasuke looked down at the ground. He narrowed his eyes and he saw a shadow over it. Sasuke widened his eyes before he looked up. He only heard a few words before he noticed two white birds aiming for him. Katsu! Deidara shouted as the ground next to Sasuke exploded. Yuna widened her eyes and jumped back before she noticed Deidara smirk. Yuna narrowed her eyes dangerously at him while Deidara chuckled. So ends the Uchiha. I was supposed to kill Orochimaru and he did it. Now where is your precious Sharingan? Deidara shouted, and he noticed Yuna take out a kunai. You're going to regret that, she said, and Deidara chuckled even more. He snapped his fingers and Tobi appeared out of the blue. Yuna could only widen her eyes in anger as to who was with them. Yuri growled as she struggled against Toba's solid grip before she noticed Yuna staring at the three of them. Yuna-san! Yuri shouted, and Yuna growled. It was only then that the smoke behind them cleared enough to show that Sasuke protected himself through the use of two snake summons. The Uchiha's Sharingan flared violently before he noticed Yuri in Toba's grip. Sasuke grabbed his sword and blurred in speed. He sped up to Deidara and Tobi. Whoa, he's really fast, Deidara thought to himself, and Sasuke quickly withdrew his sword and aimed for Toba's face. He'd aim for the midsection, but that's where Yuri was. Sasuke slashed his sword through Toba's face while Deidara backflipped away. Tobi fell to the ground over top of Yuri while Sasuke glared. That's one of you down. Why do you have Yuri with you? Also, where is Itachi? Sasuke asked, and Deidara smirked. Like he would tell the little brother just where the older brother was. Did this guy have an arrogant ego complex or something? Oi Tobi, are you dead? Deidara shouted while Sasuke and Yuna glared in shock and surprise as Tobi got to his feet and dusted his body off. He also dusted Yuri off and smiled. Hi, we're okay senpai, Tobi shouted, and Yuna's mind was running a mile a minute at what she had just seen. The guy got his head slashed through by Sasuke's sword, and yet, he was walking it off like it was nothing. Was he a spirit? No, that was only Naruto and his summons. No spirit could appear in physical form without his say-so or without the Edo Tensei. Yuna quickly moved to intercept Tobi, but to her surprise he drew a kunai and held it to Yuri's throat while Deidara smirked. Yuna quickly stopped her assault in haste. You don't want the bitch to die, right? Then you, leave. However, I'm taking the Uchiha right here, Deidara said while Yuna glared. She turned to Sasuke and she saw him slowly nod. Yuna growled, but gave a heavy sigh of her lips and backed away hurriedly. She didn't leave and stayed in a tree, but she couldn't go any further. Good. Tobi, move. Deidara shouted before he threw a dozen clay bombs towards Sasuke. Tobi yelped before he picked up Yuri and ran away childishly. Sasuke! Yuri shouted, but Sasuke just paid attention. His entire hand lit up in Raiden chakra and he threw a spray of lightning Senbon towards the animal bombs. Each Senbon stuck to a tree or on the ground and Tobi was forced to dodge them all with Yuri still in his hands. Deidara held another hand sign and was ready shout before. Wait senpai. Don't, Katsu, just yet. Tobi shouted and Deidara rolled his eyes at his pathetic partner before he stopped. He quickly landed to the ground next to Tobi, who got to his feet and placed his hands in his pouch. I won't tell you again. Release Yuri this instant, Sasuke said with his Sharingan spinning violently. Deidara just smirked before he opened the mouths on his hands as clay fell to the ground. I'll play with you a little more, he said, ignoring Sasuke's order before two clay clones rose. Their humanoid forces were weird to look at, but for Sasuke he was ready to take them down. Deidara sent the two clones at Sasuke and they quickly swerved their bodies and aimed for Sasuke's body with an unorthodox punch to his face. Yuri shouted and Yuna growled before she swiftly moved through the trees to try and make her way around the battlefield. To at least get Yuri out of their grasp. Sasuke ducked underneath a punch and swung his sword into one of the clay clones, but his sword was quickly overtaken by it and the Uchiha mentally cursed in realization before he was forced to backflip away while his sword was engulfed by the clay clone. He turned his body and dodged another attempt at a hit before he quickly delivered a punch and kick to the face and chest of the clay clone before he straightened his arm to his fingertips and, filling them with Raiden chakra, he swung it at the clone, tearing it in two and sending it to the ground. His bombs use a Doden affinity. So long as I overpower him with my Raiden, then I will win, Sasuke thought to himself before he grabbed his sword from the other clone and quickly dispatched it with a sharp slash, sending it to the ground. He then swiftly turned his head only to notice an absence of two Akatsuki members. Sasuke snorted and sucked his teeth. Shit, I was too distracted by that damn fight, he said to himself. With Deidara and Tobi. Deidara snickered to himself as a large piece of clay formed in front of him. It quickly took the form of a large clay dragon. It opened its mouth and out fell dozens of clay bombs near his and Tobi's feet. Deidara then proceeded to grab Yuri and hoist her into the air while she growled at him. Tobi, place these land mines. I'll take out the Uchiha in no time, Deidara said with a smirk on high face. Yuri growled lowly at them both and lifted her foot to try and swiftly kick Deidara in the face, but he stopped her easily. And don't think I can't kill you, bitch. Know your place, Deidara said, and Yuri just cursed mentally while Tobi just smiled, a large couple of mines, and nodded with a thumbs up. Leave it to be, senpai, Tobi said as he quickly faded into the ground. Deidara smirked before he turned to Yuri, and with a cloth, bound her mouth to keep her from talking or leaking anything to Sasuke. Yuri growled at the unfair treatment and glared daggers at Deidara, but he ignored her. It was only a few moments before Tobi returned and told Deidara that he had placed each and every landmine that his senpai would need. Deidara chuckled and Tobi took the bound Yuri again and hoisted her over his shoulder. Be careful, senpai, Tobi said, and Deidara merely nodded his head and jumped on top of the clay dragon before it flapped its wings and flew off through the air. Tobi watched Deidara fly off before he jumped through the trees to watch the fight go on. With Sasuke. Sasuke heard the rush of wind upon his person before he looked up and narrowed his eyes as he saw a large clay dragon with Deidara on top. The dragon opened its mouth while Deidara chuckled. Try and dodge this, Deidara shouted as out of the dragon's mouth a smaller dragon bursted out and flew towards Sasuke. The Uchiha glared before he jumped out of its way, but to his surprise the dragon followed him and neared his retreating body. Katsu! Deidara shouted as the small dragon exploded. Yuna widened her eyes as the smoke covered the area. She was concerned for Sasuke's safety while Deidara grinned. However, that grin faded as Sasuke jumped away from the dragon just in time. It's different than the last one. A guided missile, Sasuke thought to himself. He looked up to see the dragon flying overhead and he noticed that its tail was a lot shorter than the last time, or maybe that was his imagination. Deidara cursed and sent another clay dragon at Sasuke. The male Uchiha snorted and jumped away again from the smoke, causing Deidara to grow more frustrated. He really is fast, Deidara thought to himself, and Sasuke continued to run along before his foot was sucked into the ground. Sasuke widened his eyes at the realization that landmines were planted on the ground, and this shock wasn't missed by Deidara at all. I've got him now. Katsu! Deidara shouted, and the explosion covered Sasuke's body. Yuri widened her eyes to what she had just seen while Yuna stopped to an immediate halt. Sasuke! Yuna shouted while Deidara's dragon flew overhead. It was only until the smoke cleared did everyone see Sasuke's curse mark in the second stage. His wings had sprouted to protect him from a majority of the damage, but Deidara wasn't done. Nope, not at all. So that's Orochimaru's curse mark. Well, it won't matter soon, this next one is going to be huge. Deidara thought before he channeled his chakra through the dragon. Its mouth opened up again and showed a big clay bomb than the last one, and it was this time that Sasuke's wings twitched, ready to take flight. Unfortunately, Deidara had noticed the action as well. I'm not gonna let you fly away, he shouted as a fatter clay dragon charged towards Sasuke. Yuna and Yuri widened their eyes with worry while Tobi tried to remain impassive. Sasuke stood to his feet, but couldn't react in time, so he only blocked with one of his wings while the dragon unleashed a massive explosion upon his person. The explosion covered the field and Yuri felt the tears roll down her face while Yuna flashed her Sharingan in anger. Everyone watched as Sasuke's sword flipped out of the smoke and landed in the ground. A small lightning current ran through it. Deidara smirked at his accomplishment as he hovered over the area. He wanted to see Sasuke's dead body at his feet. He knew that the Uchiha couldn't fly after that explosion and his one wing wouldn't be able to carry him very far. That was until he heard a shot. Kaden. Goryuka no Jutsu, fire release. Great Dragon Fire Technique, Sasuke shouted as two flame dragons bursted through the smoke. Deidara widened his eyes before his guided his dragon out of the way from the flames as they shot into the air. Fire won't work on me Uchiha. Tobi, get back. Deidara shouted, and it was then that Yuna and Yuri turned to Tobi, who shouted, "Ah, run for your life, it's the C4. Tobi shouted as he took a confused Yuri further away from the field. "You're not getting away." Yuna shouted as she ran after him. She could only hope that this was the right choice as she left Sasuke to fight the other Akatsuki member. "How long are you going to hide?" Deidara asked, looking at the smoke. "Who's hiding? You're just not looking," Sasuke said. This was the shortest distance he could get to Deidara without flying. Simply gliding through the air on his one wing. The Uchiha quickly brought two wires together, and with a twist and swing of his arm he slammed two large shuriken into Deidara's body, getting a yell of pain from the blonde. "Senpai!" Tobi shouted as Deidara continued to yell. Without his guidance the dragon was falling to the ground, and it was only then did Deidara resist the pain enough to know what was going to happen and what was directly below him. His own traps turned against him. "Damn it, right below me are the land mines," Deidara thought to himself, but he could do nothing about it as his dragon's body slammed into the ground, causing an uproar of explosion across the field, pulling up sheer blankets of dust over the field. Yuna widened her eyes to the destruction, but kept onto her target, which had her master's relative in his grasp. "Sasuke, please be alright," Yuna thought to herself as she continued to run. Tobi looked back at the Uchiha girl following her, and unknown to Yuri and Yuna, he was shocked. He could see the blazing Sharingan in Yuna's eyes. Had he missed one? Another Uchiha who Itachi had let get away? No, it wasn't possible. "Are you sure you should be following Tobi? Deidara senpai is going to kill Sasuke-san if you don't warn him." "The C4 is dangerous," Tobi said, and Yuna abruptly stopped. She turned her head and growled before she mouthed to Yuri, "I'll be right back." And Yuna ran back towards Sasuke in a hurry. Sasuke landed on the ground and grabbed his sword safely before he took back to the trees. The Uchiha huffed slightly as he watched his curse mark recede into his body. "Finally finished that freak. Now to catch up to Yuna and grab Yuri," Sasuke said to himself before he heard a sudden rush of wind. The Uchiha turned around and he noticed Deidara immediately flying overhead on a clay bird. Obviously his Akatsuki cloak was gone from the explosion, and Sasuke readied himself for another fight before he heard a shout. "Sasuke, run!" Yuna shouted, and the Uchiha turned to his lover, calling him. Yuna spoke in haste, but he heard her words, and with that, Yuna did a sharp turn and ran back towards Yuri while Sasuke saw Deidara open his mouth. He noticed a large quantity of clay fall from his mouth, and it immediately began to build up until Sasuke seethed at the sight of a giant Deidara clay in front of him. The real Deidara smirked, and Sasuke realized that Yuna was right and began to run for his life from the explosion. "You won't get away, Katsu!" Deidara shouted, and Sasuke continued to race through the trees in haste before he turned around and noticed the Deidara clay clone expand. It was ready to burst, and Sasuke growled before it exploded. However, it wasn't a loud or enormous one. No, Sasuke noticed the pieces of the clay disintegrate into pieces until they were no more. Sasuke cursed and continued to run, but Deidara shook his head. "There is no escape. You're finished him," he said, and the microbombs of the C4 caught up to Sasuke, and the male Uchiha gasped as he saw his body fade away. "Damn it, this can't be happening," Sasuke said before Deidara saw his very body disappear into pieces. Meanwhile, Tobi and Yuna were far from the place of impact, and Tobi brushed a hand to his mask. "Phew, that was close, wasn't it, Yuri-chan? The C4 is a very dangerous technique by senpai. We were lucky to dodge it in time," Tobi said, and Yuri only closed her eyes in frustration. This was all happening because of her. She struggled against Tobi's body, but to no avail was her struggling working for her at all. "Naruto ni, please save me," Yuri thought to herself, and Tobi widened his eyes and gasped as Yuna tried to slam a kunai through his skull. The Uchiha widened her eyes as she saw her blade pass through his body. Her entire arms passed him, and Tobi backed away. "Wait a minute." Toby is a good boy. He just wants the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. It is Leader Sama's orders, he said, and Yuna seethed. What do you want with Shikan-sama? Yuna asked dangerously. Toby just rubbed the back of his head. Ah, Toby can't tell you. Anyway, Senpai should be wrapping this up, so I'll be seeing you. Let's go, Yuri-chan, Toby said, and before Yuna could react, Yuri was pulled into a wormhole by Toby and disappeared. Yuna growled and reached her hand out for Toba's mask, but he only passed through her and Yuna widened her eyes again. This isn't possible, she thought to herself, and she ran through him completely before Toby vanished as well. Yuna couldn't even feel his chakra signature anymore. Damn, I have to get back to Sasuke, Yuna said, running off. Meanwhile, Deidara cackled and raised his hands in the air. He did it. He finally did it. His art was better than the Sharingan. He had achieved the ultimate form in art, and he had killed Itachi's little brother, and without any blood spilled. I did it, I did it. Deidara shouted. However, that shout was stopped as his blood ran cold. He could feel the stare of death on him, and his eyes turned to only see Sasuke, in his curse mark form, approaching him. Chidori, Sasuke shouted, and he quickly pierced Deidara's chest and landed on the clay bird along with him. You've exhausted your chakra. Your reaction was slow, Sasuke said, and Deidara growled. How could this brat still be alive? That was one of his toughest techniques that he had to offer. Those eyes. How did you not die by the bombs? Deidara shouted while Sasuke glared at him. I can see the position of your landmines. It's not too hard, Sasuke responded, and you can see the position of the landmines? Deidara asked, but Sasuke didn't answer before the two were sent crashing through the forest grounds. Deidara fell off the clay bird and Sasuke landed on the ground. They both coughed and Deidara growled. Now release Yuri Uzumaki right now and tell me where Itachi is, Sasuke said, and Deidara seethed a little more. Those eyes. They reject my art. What do they hold that I can't obtain? I'll show you. Deidara shouted mentally before he launched his hands forwards, quickly sending two clay snakes towards Sasuke. They wrapped around his legs, but Sasuke just glared at Deidara evenly. He was just a bug waiting to be squashed now. Chidori Nagashi, Sasuke shouted, and a lightning current ran through his body and through the snakes. It ran towards Deidara before the blonde teen widened his eyes and quickly used the mouths on his hands to snap the snakes away, and they fell to the ground simply. I'm tired of this. You are finished. Give up, Sasuke said as he advanced on Deidara. It was only then did his legs buckle and he fell to the ground. He had faced too many of those explosions to stand. Oh boy, what a great time this was. Ha ha ha, I'm finished. I'm not done yet. I will show you my ultimate art. It will become a light in the sky. You will not survive. Deidara shouted, and Sasuke glared before he saw Deidara throw the top half of his clothes to the ground. He then held up a handful of clay and fed it to the mouth in his chest. Sasuke glared evenly before he saw Deidara's form disappear. The Akatsuki member smirked as his body began to fade. Now, tremble with fear. Be in awe. Despair. Scream. My art is. Deidara trailed off as all his body converged into the black ball that was at the side of his chest. Sasuke widened his eyes indefinitely to the act of what he was going to do. This guy was insane. He was a suicide bomber. The black ball cracked and light came out. Another crack, and another. It ultimately broke apart and a huge explosion came over the field. It covered over Sasuke's body, and the Uchiha suddenly heard a shout behind him. Sasuke! Yuna shouted as she landed in front of him. The Uchiha widened his eyes. She wasn't about to die with him, was she? He wouldn't let that happen. Yuna, move your ass. Sasuke shouted, but Yuna ignored him. She just strained her eyes, and Sasuke was shocked as he saw the Sharingan in both her eyes twist and turn as she held her hands out in front while the explosion engulfed them both. With Yura, Zabuza and the others. Everyone was currently searching the forested area. They were looking for any trace of Yuri that they could find, but for right now they weren't having any luck. Yura growled out her frustrations of the incident. They weren't finding anything of value that would help them even locate Yuri at all. Yuri, where are you? Yuna wondered. This was the last place that someone said that they had spotted two people wearing black cloaks with red clouds. Zabuza, Gurren, and Mei were with her as well. Calm down, Yura-san. We will find her for you. Don't let your anger cloud your judgment, Mei told her, and Yura breathed easily with a nod of her head. It was then that everyone felt the ground quake violently as they shifted their balance. Yura fell to the ground while Zabuza and Gurren quickly clung to a tree. Mei shifted her stance, and it was then that everyone was drawn to a large light way off in the distance. It tore the sky open and the trees were blown away. "What the hell is that?" Zabuza shouted at the top of his voice. Because of the wind, everyone's hair was blown back as well. "I have no idea, but that's one huge explosion. Damn, I've never seen anything like it at all. It tops Nisama's Rasenshuriken," Yura said, and Mei covered her visible eye from the light itself. Whatever did that, then it would have a large crater, and she could only wonder who was at the center of it. However, as fast as the explosion came, everyone had seen a larger white light wrap around the explosion, and soon there was nothing. It was gone instantly. This shook everyone. "What just happened?" Gurren asked, but no one knew what to tell her. They just didn't. A huge explosion in front of them, and now it was gone. "Should we go and investigate?" Zabuza asked, and before they could decide, Yura had run off, much to their chagrin. The three sighed and shook their heads indefinitely before they nodded to each other and ran off after Yura. With Sasuke and Yuna. Sasuke just continued to stare at Yuna's back along with the explosion that had just disappeared from their view. He didn't know what to say about what he had just seen. Sasuke was planning to just sacrifice Manda to get away, but this, he just didn't understand. Yuna fell to the ground with a heavy huff. It was this that caused Sasuke to get up and run to her side. He looked over Yuna's body and he noticed the blood slowly seeping from her eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked while her eyes twitched. Yuna just closed them and nodded. When she opened them, Sasuke noticed that her Sharingan was back to normal. Yuna covered her eyes and smiled. "Yeah, I think so," she said, and Sasuke slowly leaned her up and placed her next to a tree. "What was that?" he asked, and Yuna just coughed and kept her eyes closed. She leaned up to try and speak with Sasuke as comfortably as she could, but her body was still. Seeing this, Sasuke moved behind her and just gently laid Yuna to his chest, which made her shudder, but she smiled. "It was my Sharingan, Sasuke. It's my own Mangekyo Sharingan. I activated it just before my death. I had died from the mission to Iwa. I told you that, but I obtained it because we had been sold out. We died because they were informed of our arrival. My best friend, Faye, she sold us out. We were massacred by Iwa. However, I had lived. I swore that I would make her pay, and make her pay I did. I was angry at them. All of them, and I wanted their death. So I recklessly rushed at Faye and stabbed her hard with a kunai. She died in my arms. I would have been happy, but I wasn't. I screamed out my frustrations while the Iwanin converged on me. I had heard that they wanted to sell my body for the Sharingan and have me breed their children. I didn't want that. I refused it all. I shouted out to anything, and they all watched as my Sharingan twisted and turned. I obtained the Mangekyo Sharingan. I didn't even think if I could perform the Amaterasu, Susanoo or Tsukuyomi like a few in our clan. I just wanted their death. So I used each and every last bit of my chakra into a jutsu that I had only seen one time in my life. A jutsu that was considered a Kekai Genkai, but it could be learned. I used it unconsciously. It turns out, my Mangekyo is able to project Jitten, dust released by the Sandaime Tsuchikage. Don't ask me how I can, because even I don't know. I just know that I can. However, it's very chakra taxing, Yuna explained, and Sasuke just held her close for a bit. I understand. Where is Yuri? Sasuke asked, and Yuna immediately widened her eyes. That jump was all Sasuke needed to know. That bastard had gotten away with her. Naruto was bound to be pissed off. "Come on, we're leaving," Sasuke said as he picked Yuna up bridal style. Yuna nodded and sighed. "What about Itachi?" Yuna asked as Sasuke raced through the trees. He just kept forward before he glanced towards Yuna. "He will have to wait. Yuri comes first," Sasuke replied, and Yuna just nodded her head to his words. The two Uchiha arrived at the campsite to see the flustered Team Hubby. "Sasuke, what was that explosion? Also, what happened to the both of you?" Suigetsu asked the battered Uchiha. Sasuke just snorted, and Karen stepped forward. She unfurled her sleeves of her arms while Sasuke and Yuna bit into her. Her chakra began to heal them both immediately. "It was Akatsuki. We took care of it, but we're taking a detour. Prepare to move out," Sasuke ordered, and in less than 10 minutes everyone had packed up and Karen had picked up Toba's chakra signal. Team Hubby immediately shot off towards him, but they didn't know how far he was. Karen had told them that he was at least 2 days away at this point. He really must have been moving. With Naruto, 2 days later. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he strapped his sword to his back. He quickly placed his clothes on with Yugao, Kakashi and Makoto waiting for him at the door. The blonde glared indefinitely and walked down the stairs. He noticed his teammates waiting for him and smiled. He had been using those 2 days to get a better connection to Kyuubi. Because his Biju wasn't trying to take his body at every turn, then they actually got much farther. Naruto went up to the Six Tails while staying in control of his anger. He had noticed that unlike the Four Tails, that this one had a skeleton added to it. Kyuubi had told him that it was for decoration or defense. Of course, him using that really got Naruto a lot of attention. Shinobi had wondered if Kyuubi was getting loose, but when they had saw Naruto in control, he had told them that he was taming Kyuubi to work for him. This had worked for him greatly, as he was able to try to use Kyuubi as he wished, but Tsunade had told him that he must always have a shinobi present, which was sort of bullshit, right? He was supposed to be a part of her exclusive Hinoken squad. How could she not trust him? Well, when Naruto thought about it, then it made sense. The only one who ever really stayed with him was Yamato, and that was at a safe distance from the Yuki, but Naruto kept saying that he was alright. Yamato had warned him that repeated use of fast regeneration to his body would deplete his life, which made Naruto chuckle, especially when he thought about it. Since using Honsho, Naruto's body was tougher and could withstand Yuki. Since Honsho is 10x more powerful than Yuki, then it had to be controlled more. Yuki was just the lesser version. There was a reason that Honsho was called Power of Life. All in all, it was a good 2 days, but now he could get serious and do what the hell he wanted to those 2 days ago. Find his little sister. Let's get going, he said, and they nodded their heads. Yugao opened the door, but Naruto shook his head so she closed it. Since they had a few wounds then, Kakashi and Makoto weren't informed about Yuri's kidnapping until Naruto told them. They had just decided to wait with him, and Yugao did the same. Jikuyugami no Jutsu, Naruto shouted, and the large portal appeared in front of all of them. Naruto had immediately thought of his mother and smiled. I'm still amazed when I see that thing. Is it really safe? Makoto asked worriedly, and Naruto nodded. He had used it only for a little while, but it was safe, as far as he knew. Kakashi just looked at the portal inside. If they archived this jutsu into Konoha's library, then by Kami it would never be used by anyone other than Naruto or Kushina. Yugao seemed rather indifferent. She was surprised at it, but she probably hid it better. Yeah, it's safe. Let's go now, Naruto said, and the four stepped through the portal. It had been a frustrating 2 days for Naruto, but he was more than ready to go and find Yuri. He had locked to his mother's signature, and the portal closed as they all passed through it. With Team Hubby, Kaden, Hosenka no Jutsu, Sasuke shouted as he sent a spray of fire bullets at Tobi. He was still carrying Yuri, who wasn't gagged anymore. She had seen Sasuke, Yuna and a few people she didn't know coming for her, which made her all the more happy. Wait a minute. Stop attacking Tobi. Tobi shouted as he ran through the trees. Team Hubby continued to run through the trees after him, and since they had been running for a long time, now that they had caught up, they wouldn't let him get away. Sasuke had a debt to Naruto and he would fucking pay it. Uchiha Sasuke never lived in someone else's debt. Unless that was Yuna or his mother. Sasuke, why are we trying to get this girl? Karen asked, but Sasuke ignored her question. Karen turned to Jugo and Suigetsu, who shrugged their shoulders. She's important to us. Please help, Yuna pleaded, and Karen just sighed with a nod. Suigetsu smirked and then chuckled. He flashed through his hand signs before he responded. Well, we can't have that, I guess. Suiryuden no Jutsu, Suigetsu shouted, and he sent a water dragon towards Tobi. The Akatsuki member gulped and quickly rolled to the ground, avoiding the attack. He hid himself behind a tree with Yuri, who growled. She struggled a little more, but Tobi held her tight. It was until he heard another shout. Shoten, Hasha Koryu crystal release. Tearing crystal falling dragon, Gurren shouted, and Tobi shouted as he and Yuri rolled along the ground and dodged 3 crystal dragons that slammed into the ground. Sasuke and Team Hubby turned their gaze to it, and the Uchiha raised an eyebrow before he landed to the ground. He noticed Tobi, and before long he saw Gurren come out of the trees. Quickly following her was Yura, Zabuza, Mei, Fuka and Kushina. The latter two had just met up with everyone else about 10 minutes ago. Gurren had said that she saw someone move and went to intercept. Sasuke, Yuna, what are you doing here? Yura asked, and Sasuke folded his arms. He looked at the group before he pointed towards Toby, who was still holding Yuri. Yura widened her eyes and shouted, Yuri, hold on. We're going to get you. Yura shouted, and Yuri just smiled. So many people were coming to help her, and it made her smile. Nei-chan. Yuri shouted, and Zabuza proceeded to grab the hilt of his sword. The sword that he noticed Suigetsu was looking at in awe and shock. There was also some anger in there that both Sasuke and Zabuza had noticed, but they ignored it. Kushina looked up and her eyes glared dangerously. That mask, that movement. It had to be him. Die, Kushina said silently. The field was suddenly bursting with ki, and Toby finally had the decency to gulp as his eyes locked onto Kushina's form. How is she alive? She died along with the Yondaime Hokage. I knew it for a fact. First this new Uchiha and now her. What is going on here? Toby thought to himself, and Yuri felt high grip tighten. Why are all of you after Toby? Toby asked, and Kushina blurred out as her sword swiftly tried to slash Toba's head off. She only narrowed her eyes in hatred as her blade passed him effortlessly. This mask, it was different, but this was him. He was the true reason that Naruto grew up alone. Kushina wouldn't forgive him. Never on her life. Wait lady. Stop attacking me. Toby is just trying to be a good boy and you are making it hard, Toby said, but he only saw a woman's righteous rage in his eyes. Kushina growled and backflipped away. Not another one. You aren't taking another one from me. She shouted as she aggressively attacked her past enemy. Back then she was weak from childbirth, but now she could rip him apart and not feel guilty about it. Listen to Toby. Toby shouted as he backflipped away and landed on a branch with Yuri. He only got Kushina to stop as he pulled a kunai to Yuri's neck. Kushina did indeed halt, but she was waiting for the slightest slip from him so she could cut him apart. Phew, finally. Just hand over the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and Toby will leave. Why are you all being mean to Toby? Toby shouted and everyone growled. They knew this guy was dangerous as he had been avoiding Kushina's strikes. Only complete expert shinobi could do that, especially when she was dead serious. This guy was no joke. No, you're not taking my son again. Kushina gritted her teeth. Toby sighed and shook his head behind his mask. Toby doesn't want to be a bad boy and kill Yuri-chan. He likes Yuri-chan, but Toby likes the Kyuubi Jinchuriki much more. Where is he? Toby asked, and it was only in an instant as Kushina looked overhead. She noticed the familiar purplish portal open up and out popped Kakashi, Yugao, Makoto, and Naruto, holding a blue sphere. He quickly assessed the situation and shouted, "Let Yuri go." Rasengan, Naruto shouted, and Toby looked overhead and gasped as Naruto slammed the ball into his body. An explosion quickly followed and everyone gasped. They saw Naruto fly through the tree branch and the blonde cursed underneath his breath. He landed on the ground and Naruto looked up. Naruto ni. Yuri shouted and Naruto glared. It was this hatred that Kyuubi stirred from his sleep. He opened his eyes and the sight made him growl. He thrashed against his cage furiously, which got Naruto's attention. Brat, I will order this from you right now. Kill him, decimate him, sell his soul to Shin. If there is any Uchiha I want gone, then make it him immediately. That mask, that glaring eye. That's him. He's the one who made me attack your village. Kid, I demand that you kill him. Kill Madara Uchiha. Kyuubi shouted and Naruto glared up. So that was him. The asshole who was the whole cause of Naruto's life being a bitch up to this point. With pleasure, Kyuubi, Naruto said, and he charged at Toby, but stopped also as he noticed the kunai to Yuri's neck. It slowly seeped out blood and fell to the ground. Naruto growled and Toby sighed. Now Toby cut Yuri-chan's neck. He didn't want to do that. Look what you made him do. Just hand over the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He's here now. Just be good people and do as Toby says, Toby pleaded, and Yura growled. If you think we're going to do that, then fine, Naruto said instantly. People looked at him dumbfounded while Toby jumped up and down. Naruto had to get Yuri away from him. So long as he held Yuri, then this wouldn't go the way that they wanted. He had seen himself phase through Toba's body, and he knew that so long as the man stood still, then there wouldn't be a fucking ghost of a chance to get to him. What? but Ni-sama, you can't. Yura trailed off while Naruto leapt in front of Toby. Toby took a hold of Naruto and quickly let Yuri go. The Uzumaki girl fell to the ground and Toby smiled. See what happens when you are good people. Thank you for cooperating. We will be going now, Toby said as he and Naruto vanished in a wormhole. Everyone was silent before they noticed Yura rush Yuri and pulled her sister into her arms. I'm glad that you're alright. You had me so worried, Yura said with a smile, but Yuri's face showed worry. No, go after Naruto. He can't beat that guy on his own. Help him. Yuri shouted and everyone looked left and right. Makoto glanced to her son and Sasuke glanced to Kakashi, Kakashi to Yugao and Yugao to Kushina. They had all nodded. They had questioned Naruto for what he did, but he showed them a discreet signal. They had all caught it. They were to simply wait. We will wait, Kushina said more than a little frustrated. Everyone glanced to each other, but everyone could see that more than anything Kushina wanted to go after them. Whether it was to kill that Akatsuki member or rescue her son they didn't know. Sasuke, why is Zabuza still alive? Suigetsu asked and the Uchiha glared at him. Zabuza did the same as did everyone else. They all sweat dropped while Suigetsu rubbed the back of his head. Wait, Uzumaki, there are more? Karen asked and Sasuke just nodded. Hearing her words, Kushina, Yura, Yuri, Fuka and Gurren turned to Karen. Gurren Uzumaki, Fuka Uzumaki, Yura Uzumaki, Yuri Uzumaki, and lastly Kushina Uzumaki. Apparently so, Mei said and Karen widened her eyes. She turned to Sasuke and the Uchiha nodded his head. Karen just looked on at Fuka who gave a slight wave. Gurren did the same while Yura and Yuri just smiled, though it was rather strained. Kushina didn't smile at all. She was too worried to smile. It can be said that ask anyone who knew the Uzumaki and, except when it came to Fuinjutsu, they were not known for their patience. With Naruto and Toby, the two shinobi appeared immediately in a field away from the unwanted attention and Naruto glared towards Toby. He noticed the Sharingan glaring dangerously at him. Kyuubi had been dispelling the genjutsu Toby was trying to place around Naruto. He wanted the blonde to kill this guy so he would gladly fuck over any genjutsu that was used. He had been able to do such things since those 16 years ago. Even Kyuubi wasn't the same as he used to be. Naruto noticed a kunai to his neck and glared. What is your game? I don't care about the girl, but you know something, Toby said and Naruto just glared. Oh, I don't know. I finally had the time to think about it, Tem. It's really a shame. Kakashi-sensei and Rin-chan would sad at this. Obito Tem, Naruto said and he saw Toby visibly shudder. He glared at Naruto and he could tell from the blonde's gaze that he knew it was him. How don't you know I'm Madara? Toby asked and Naruto snorted. Because Madara is within Shin's realm. Where he will stay forever. I know because you are the only Uchiha that I know could be alive right now, Naruto said and Toby raised an eyebrow before he growled. It's all wrong. How does he know? He can't know. What does he mean Rin would be sad about this? What does he know? This brat, I knew I should have killed him, Obito thought to himself. The entire plan was now at risk. What was that about Rin? What did you say? Obito asked and Naruto just closed his eyes. Surrender and you'll find out, Naruto said and he didn't have to have the Sharingan nor the Byakugan to know that Toby tried to kick him. The blonde dodged the attack and quickly grabbed his sword. Toby narrowed his eyes dangerously at Naruto before the blonde smirked and moved his lips. Kukanugami no Jutsu, Naruto shouted and time immediately stopped. Toby stopped in mid-movement and Naruto quickly moved. He placed his sword at Toba's neck and slashed it down. He could only gasp as his sword went through his body, but nothing happened. What? I stopped time. How is he still intangible? Naruto wondered. The blonde cursed before he slashed his sword again and again. He even added Honsho to it, but it didn't work. Damn it, I was afraid of this shit, Kyuubi said, but Naruto didn't pay it a mind. He just settled for attack after attack before his 5 minutes were up. The blonde sent his sword at Obito's face only for Obito to slightly widen his eyes in surprise before it passed through him. Naruto cursed before a kick was planted to his side. He was slammed across the field and the blonde quickly backflipped away. He's fast, I didn't see him move a few times. However, he's not as fast as his father. Nor does he have his jutsu. I will get my answers soon enough, Toby thought to himself before he heard Naruto shout. What are you? Why can't I hit you? Naruto shouted and Toby just chuckled. This was going to be too easy. It's not like I would tell you Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Just submit to me, Toby said as he charged Naruto. The blonde growled and he ran for Toby as well. He quickly tightened his grip on his sword and the two neared each other. Naruto stuck out his sword, but he only saw Toby pass him. Naruto widened his eyes to this and Kyuubi snarled. The two quickly passed and Naruto could only gasp as he stopped on a soft piece of earth. "Aw shit," Naruto said while Toby smirked. He was more than ready for the explosion to hit the blonde. Naruto cursed as quickly whispered. "Kukonugami no Jutsu," Naruto shouted as the time stopped again. He quickly jumped away from the landmine and he charged at Toby. He drew his sword through his throat, but that didn't work either. The summoner to Shin growled with each attack before his 5 minutes were up again. The explosion followed out and Naruto backflipped away. Damn, why? Why can't I hit him? If I stop time then I should be able to hit him. Wait, if I can't hit him then why doesn't he hit me? He had the perfect chance to kill me or knock me out during that time. He should have taken it. Why didn't he? Unless, he couldn't hit me. What if, he can't attack and be intangible at the same time? If that's the case then, Naruto widened his eyes to a sudden realization. He glared directly at Obito who was across the field from him. "You are nothing like your father. It's quite a shame that you will never be able to beat me," Toby told him and Naruto just shook his head. He had one Kukonugami left. He had to make it count. "Don't count on it Obito Tem. I will take you down, but why don't you tell me something? Why did you unleash Kyuubi? Why Konoha? Why are you doing this to them?" Naruto asked and Toby just snorted. "A little child like you who knows nothing of the world wouldn't understand. The village isn't needed, its fire has dwindled, its people a disgrace and its future a hollow one. I didn't not attack Konoha because I wanted to. It was a necessity. Just as your death is a necessity to true peace. A peace where all are under my rule. That is the only peace that is needed," Toby said and Naruto glared. And I thought Sasuke was a stuck-up asshole," Naruto muttered to himself. He just shook his head and quickly charged at Toby. Seeing the action, Obito humored the blonde in front of him. The two moved closer to each other and Naruto held out his hand. Toby did the same and they both continued on. Naruto glared daggers at Toby while Toba's eyes continued to try and cast their genjutsu over Naruto which continued to fail from Kyuubi. The two passed each other again and Naruto smirked. "Why don't you hit me? For one who can't seem to wait for my death you are taking it rather slow. Did your sense dull old man?" Naruto asked and Obito just glared at him. His hands slipped down and he just glared at Naruto. He just nodded. Why was he waiting? This was simple, maybe he wanted to toy with the blonde's hopes for just a bit. However that was the end. He would end it with this. Toby took a paralysis seal from inside his robes into his hands. If Naruto was touched by it then it would be over. The blonde would be his and he would capture him easily. "Kid, get your fucking act together. Hit his ass hard. I meant it, damn it." Kyuubi growled and Naruto nodded. He sighed and steadied his breathing. He slowly steadied his hands and Naruto grinned. "You got it Kyuubi," Naruto said and with a swift turn he launched himself back at Toby. Toby narrowed his visible eye in displeasure at the blonde's lack of creativity. This was over. The two shinobi quickly ran up to each other across the field, both of their forms a blur to anyone who was watching. The spirits who were watching gulped and watched as Naruto growled. The blonde, in haste, threw his sword at Toby. It easily passed through him and Toby reached out his hand. He went out to grab Naruto's arm while the two drifted closer. Closer, closer, closer. Naruto and Toby could see the anxiousness in each other's eyes. Naruto quickly held out his hand and formed a Rasengan. It was only down to this, if he could say his words faster than Toby could move. This had to work. Naruto brought his Rasengan closer to Toba's mask while Toby smirked in his thoughts. "You are nothing like your father. I win," Toby said mentally and Naruto watched his hand immediately twitch. Naruto saw his chance and took it in a hurry. "Kukonugami no Jutsu," Naruto all but shouted and Toba's arm immediately stopped in mid-grab. Time stopped around Naruto and the blonde quickly hurried. He jumped into the air and brought his arm back. His Rasengan flashed dangerously in the distorted space above Toba's back while he shouted at the top of his voice. "Rasengan," Naruto shouted as he slammed the spear into Toba's back. Time resumed instantly around them and all Toby saw was an orange blur flash before he was slammed into the ground. Naruto roared as the ground shook from his power and Kyuubi shouted a roar of approval. Toby grunted at the immediate pain to his body. What is this? Toby thought before Naruto continued to push him through the ground while he spoke. I won't lose to you, Obito Tem. Konoha's gonna live. You are pathetic, Naruto said, and the ground erupted from the damage around them. Chapter 30. The ground erupted from Naruto's Rasengan before the blonde quickly paused and backflipped away. He grabbed his sword that had stuck to a tree and took it back into his hands while he glared back at Obito, who struggled to his feet. The masked Akatsuki member coughed and his Sharingan glared dangerously at the blonde in front of him while he tried to fathom what had just happened. The blonde in front of him had not only managed to move faster than him, but he also easily bashed him into the ground. He was just as fast, no faster, than his father. Did he know the Hiraishin? No, there was no account that Naruto had learned it, so what was that? I see. I underestimated you. I didn't think you knew of your father's jutsu. The both of you really can work my nerves. But don't think that one hit saves you, Obito said while Naruto just continued to glare at him evenly. He then channeled his Honsho into his eyes and he noticed the spirits all glaring at Toby while he did the same. He steadied his hands on his sword while Toby rubbed his neck. You had asked me about Rin-chan, well, it's quite simple. You just have to be captured by me and come with us, Naruto said, and Obito just glared before he drew a kunai from his sleeve. You will not dishonor her memory. I will see to that. Make sense right now or I will kill you where you stand, he said, and Naruto just folded his arms. You already tried that, and how did that work out for you? Naruto asked, and Toby just frowned behind his mask. He then shook his head before he heard Naruto open his mouth. He was prepared for anything, but a bird call wasn't one of them. With Hinoken. Everyone heard the bird call and Kushina immediately sprinted off with Kakashi, Yugao, Makoto and Sasuke right behind her. The Red Death really seemed to be moving the fastest with the others just hot on her trail. That was the signal. Let's go, she said, and everyone nodded as they raced through the trees, leaving Suigetsu, Jugo, Yuna, Mei, Zabuza and the Uzumaki family behind. Not that any of them really minded. They were sure that the others would come back eventually, they hoped. With Naruto. Toby and Naruto clashed sword to kunai while the two continued to try and land blows on each other. Naruto had the most difficulty since he had used all three of his jutsu moves in one turn, which was something he wasn't very happy about. He really had to increase the number of uses when this was all over. Naruto and Toby backed away from each other, and it was only then did Obito notice the newly formed eyes that Naruto had. He seemed lost in them as he felt like his very existence was getting sucked away. He felt like his Sharingan was no match for this power, and yet it wasn't even a dojutsu. It was just some mysterious power. Obviously Toby had to keep a closer eye on the Kyuubi Jinchuriki from now on, especially since Naruto knew who he was. He had hoped that no one would completely know who he was until he had set things in motion. This was starting to become a large pain. And to add to it, Sochi, we're here, Kushina said as the members of Hinoken dropped to the ground, each having their swords in hand. Toby eyed Makoto, who eyed him right back, and he noticed Sasuke's Sharingan blazing. He then allowed his eyes to settle on Kakashi. The sight of his former teammate made Obito snort while the others seemed ready to move at a moment's notice. So you called for help. I'm impressed that you would. Don't think your luck will continue forever. I have learned a lot from this little encounter. Not you worry, Kyuubi Jinchuriki. You will be mine, one way or the other, Toby said, and Naruto just wanted as Toby warped away before vanishing from the field without a trace of chakra. Naruto looked up and he noticed the spirits pointing in the direction that Toby had gone. Naruto just closed his eyes and shook his head. He couldn't afford it right now. Kakashi-sensei, I'm not about to keep this from you, and I think the both of us should tell Rin-chan. That was Obito who I had just fought, Naruto said, and Kakashi widened his eyes. Kushina did also, while the former dropped his sword and fell to his knees. Everyone watched the interaction, but with Kakashi was Kushina's surprise. Oh, Obito. But he was on Minato's team. He was a nice boy. I had heard from Kakashi and Rin that he had died. What happened? Kushina asked, and Sasuke glanced at Naruto while the blonde rolled his eyes. Don't even look at me, Tem. I don't know either. I wasn't even around during that time. Naruto said, and Sasuke just shrugged his shoulders. Everyone had stayed in the field and Kakashi glanced towards his blonde teammate. That couldn't be Obito. He wouldn't join something like Akatsuki. Obito, Kakashi trailed off while Kushina shook her head. But it couldn't have been Obito during the Kyuubi incident. That would mean that he could control Kyuubi just like Uchiha Madara. Also would have had to have been the same age as Kakashi during that time. How could he get strong enough to pass Kakashi, who was a Jonin, to fight Minato, who was a Kage? Kushina asked. Naruto just sighed and shook his head. I don't know that since I wasn't there, but if you said that during 2chan's fights that this guy could pass through him, then this is the same guy, cause he did it to me. Also, he never refuted it when I told him that he was Obito. Also, he was really shaken by the thought of Rin-chan being around. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together, Naruto said, and everyone glanced at each other. Kakashi got back up to his feet and he sighed. Obito, what has happened to you? Kakashi thought to himself before they saw Sasuke fold his arms. Well, whoever that guy is, he's gone and he won't be coming back. However, we can't rest knowing that he might come back since Naruto knows too much. If he does show up, then it will be bad nonetheless, Sasuke said, and the others agreed with him on that. Ka-chan, what would you want to do now that you know? Naruto asked, and Kushina stiffened. Kakashi glanced at her before the others turned back to Naruto, knowing that it was also a question directed at him. Kakashi-sensei, if you, or Rin-chan, can't give me a good reason, then I will kill him and give his soul to Shin. It's what he wants since, in some way, he's offended my summon, and you know how I feel about that. So if you guys do fight it out and you want him to live, then you'll have to give me one hell of a reason, Naruto said while Kakashi flinched. A summoner did have duties to their summons, and this was something that Kakashi knew about very well. I understand, Naruto. Thank you, I think, Kakashi said, and Naruto just nodded before they all heard a clap and turned to Makoto. Well, he's gone and we will see him again. I had noticed the Sharingan in his eyes and Sasuke, that proves that like us and Itachi he knows about the Mangekyo, but he's gone and we can't find him, so let's just cut our victories, take Yuri back to Uzushio and just be glad that she's safe, Makoto said, and everyone could agree with that. Yeah, but knowing that he was able to infiltrate it so easy makes me concerned. I think we neglected the island's security since it was unknown. If Yuri-chan does stay in Uzushio, then we'll have to make a lot of security things. If we can't, then I think we should take her and Yura to Konoha. If only for a few days while we do that, Naruto said, and everyone glanced at each other again before nodding, with Naruto walking up to Sasuke. Also, Sasuke, thanks for helping to save Yuri. I can't imagine how far along you were in finding Itachi. I just wanted to say that, Naruto said before Sasuke just waved him off and folded his arms. It was nothing, loser. I just worry about her too, Sasuke said, and Naruto nodded before they recollected themselves with their group of friends. Uzushiogakur. Rin sighed as she and Yukimaru continued to monitor Haku. She was just sleeping regularly as her chest continued to rise and fall. You stare at her any harder and your eyes might pop out of your head, Rin said, and Yukimaru gasped before he backed away and rubbed the back of his head with a blush. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Was I disturbing her? He asked, and Rin just shook her head before they noticed Haku open her eyes. They darted left and right between her two guardians before she leaned up with a grimace and touched her slightly broken ribs. How you feeling? Yukimaru asked, more than a little worried, while Haku just chuckled and softly patted his head and ruffled his hair. I'm fine. When can I go search with Zabuza-sama and the others? Haku asked while Rin shook her head. No time soon for you. You might know the body's pressure points and you're well adept in medical training, but I took the medical training also like you and you can hardly move, Rin said while Haku just sighed. She nodded and leaned back to the bed before everyone noticed a flash of purple lightning. Yukimaru jumped up and quickly ducked behind Rin, who stood in front of Haku with a kunai. Haku just glared before everyone noticed Naruto, Kushina, Yugao, Makoto, Sasuke, Kakashi and lots of other people come through a large portal as they dropped to the ground. And that's the awesomeness of the Jikuyugami no Jutsu, Naruto said while Sasuke shivered. He just shook his head while he touched over his body. I swear some of my organs got rearranged in that, he said while others laughed at him. Yukimaru and Rin sighed as the latter dropped her kunai and the former quickly ran out into the field. Gurren-chan, you made it back. Along with Naruto ni, Yukimaru said, and Gurren nodded as she patted Yukimaru's head while Mei took the opportunity to closely look at Naruto. She quickly wrapped her slender arms around him, getting the blonde to gulp. You really are Minato's kid. You're so cute, cousin, she said, and the blonde gulped again and nervously chuckled while Kushina just glared at the both of them. Naruto saw her action while she huffed and the blonde sighed. He watched his mother leave into the house before he noticed Yura hugging the hell out of Yuri, which really put a smile on his face. I can't believe that you got her back. Thank goodness, Rin said while Yura and Yuri nodded their heads together. However, they were all a bit put off by Suigetsu eyeing the sword on Zabuza's back. What do you want, brat? Zabuza asked, clearly irritated, while Suigetsu just turned to Sasuke. The Uchiha glared at Suigetsu and just nodded while Suigetsu sighed. He then backed up and shook his head. Nothing, just nothing, the young swordsman said before he went off to sulk somewhere, which Sasuke knew he was doing, but decided to let him go. What is this place anyway? I've never been here before in my life, and yet, the chakra here is absolutely abundant. I can feel it in my body. I have a connection to this place, Karen said while Jugo and Sasuke glanced at her. They then turned to each other, with the latter shrugging his shoulders and taking Yuna up the stairs. That's because this is Uzushiobukure, the birthplace and village of the Uzumaki clan, Gurren said along with Fuka, who nodded. Karen stared at them both with a shocked look on her face. That's why she felt so connected to the place. It was her ancestors' home, and from the looks of it, she really wasn't the only Uzumaki around. I can't believe it, she said as she stepped into one of the houses. She looked across the room to see the refurbished furniture, the glossy and waxed floors, the perfect kitchen and the well-made beds. Karen sat on one of them and sighed. Wow, this thing is better than the beds in Orochimaru's base. How did I not know about this? Karen wondered to herself while she heard the various sounds of chatter outside. Deciding to look around later, she exited the house and came out to see everyone else talking. And that's when Nisama rescued Yuri. It was amazing, Yura said while the others just laughed and nodded. Yuri turned to Yukimaru and the two shook hands with each other and offered their smiles while everyone else went on talking. With Naruto, the blonde motioned, with his finger, for Kakashi and Rin to follow him, and the two did, with Kakashi knowing what this was probably about. When Rin asked him, he just didn't have the heart to tell her, which was something that Rin had noticed, but she was sure that Naruto was going to, more or less. Heading to a private spot in the village, Naruto had told Rin everything that he had told Kakashi about Obito and the fight that the two of them had. Upon hearing everything about it, Rin just allowed her head to drop downward slightly. I see. So I was right. It is Obito. I can't believe that he would do this. What happened to him? Rin asked, and Naruto just shook his head. He knew he couldn't answer that, and he didn't try either. Kakashi also seemed saddened at this almost more than Rin was. It's all my fault. Maybe if we had checked him better, then we could have saved him. I don't know about it, Kakashi said while Rin just patted his shoulder. She sighed before she looked towards Naruto. Shikan-sama, can you do anything? She asked, and while Naruto hated that name, he knew Rin was just trying to polite, which is why he answered rather than corrected her on that. If I'm going to do anything with him, then it'll turn messy. For right now he doesn't seem to know or believe that you're alive, Rin-chan. If he sees you, then I don't know how he will react. Same could be said for you, Kakashi-sensei. If either of you are going to come up with a plan, then you'll have to, Naruto said as he walked off, leaving the two teammates of Team Minato to think it over. Nighttime. People clamored around the dinner table while Kushina, Yugao and Makoto continued to place food at said table. Yukimaru was helping Haku eat her own food since she needed a little help in getting to lean up. Karen was merely talking with Gurren and Mei while all three glared at both Kakashi and Fuka, who were giggling perversely next to each other as they read the book. Rin especially glared, but only one of confusion. What are you two even reading? Rin asked as she took the book and read it for a few lines. Kakashi grimaced while Fuka rubbed the back of her head. Rin suddenly blushed while her eyebrow twitched. She flipped the page while Kakashi rubbed the back of his head while Fuka just let her elbows rest on the table. Rin scanned through the page before she closed the book and gave it back to Kakashi. She stood to her feet and walked over to them while Fuka opened the book. So, what happens next? Rin asked, and Kakashi widened his visible eye while Fuka snickered. Gurren, Karen and Mei gasped at Rin, who just shrugged her shoulders while she looked over Fuka's shoulder. What? Oh yeah, I'm slightly offended, but it's good. At the very least it has a storyline and not mindless sex. Besides, I wonder how much Kakashi has learned from this, Rin said, glaring at Kakashi and his attire while the Hinokan member just twitched and said nothing. Obviously, with Rin's age increase also came her complete knowledge, confusion and interest in the world of adultish things. Suigetsu and Jugo just shook their heads at the scene, wondering what all the fuss was about before Kakashi handed a copy to them both. Suigetsu opened the book and immediately grinned while Jugo just ignored it. He wasn't really caring for most things while Suigetsu decided to ask. Has anyone seen Sasuke? Suigetsu asked and some of the others glanced to each other. Oh, that reminds me that Yuna-san isn't here either, Yura said, eating her own fold, and Makoto, having finished her part, quickly opened the sliding door and walked outside while turning around with a sudden smile. I'll go look for them, Makoto said, and she left everyone else in the room while Yugao decided to speak as well. Anyone know where Naruto-san is too? Yugao asked and Yura nodded, knowing full well the answer to that one. He's with Yuri, somewhere, she said, and Yugao just nodded while she walked off to go and do some training. With Makoto, the Uchiha matriarch roamed the forest looking for her son and little cousin as she pushed branches and bushes out of her way. She would have grumbled about the misty air at night time, but she just dealt with it and continued to walk, leaving both the house and the village behind before she came up to a small shack. She raised an eyebrow before she noticed two forms leaning against it. She knew both forms immediately. The form of Sasuke and Yuna. Hey Sas, Makoto trailed off before she noticed. In shock, Sasuke quickly kissed Yuna while her hands trailed along his torso. Makoto stood silent as the two cousins continued in their embrace. She stopped walking while she noticed Yuna gently push Sasuke back. Sasuke, I don't know. I do care about you a lot, but I also care about Makoto-sama. What if she hates me for this? I can't have her hating you too. What would we do if not only she found out, but everyone else did as well? Yuna asked and Makoto frowned. Sasuke sighed before he brought a finger to Yuna's chin. Then I will tell her myself, and if Ka-san has a problem with it then I will handle it. Sorry, but I'm not letting you go that easily, Sasuke said, grabbing Yuna's arm, getting a surprise out of her. Sasuke, she said, and the Uchiha just narrowed his eyes. Just trust me for a bit, alright? I'll work it out, Sasuke said, and Yuna just nodded her head before Sasuke brought her back into a kiss while Makoto continued to watch. However, she suddenly jumped slightly when a hand touched her shoulder. She turned and she noticed Naruto with a wide grin and a finger to his lips, silencing her. Why, you're a clone, Makoto said, and Naruto nodded his head. He rubbed the back of it and chuckled. Yep, boss needed me to do something and I find this. So Makoto-chan, what do you think? Surprised, right? Naruto asked and Makoto nodded. Surprised was the least of it. She was absolutely floored at what she was seeing in front of her before turning to Naruto. Wait, you knew about this? When? She asked, and the Naruto clone brought a finger to its chin while pondering the question a little. Remember that time that Sasuke and I had left to go and take out Orochimaru? Then it was around that time, I think. I had my guesses, but that was the gist of it. Sasuke was in a particular good mood, though he really tried to hide it from me and Yura while Yuna was a little silent. I figured this was why, Naruto said, and Makoto just shook her head. Why would they think I would hate them? Honestly, I'm very open-minded, unlike Fugaku. I think it's sweet. A little concerning, but still sweet to me. All her life, Yuna's never been very womanish. She only concerned herself with training. Almost to the point that when she had short hair she was confused as a boy. No one ever complimented her until Sasuke. To think this was going on and I didn't even notice. Shows how much I missed out on my son, Makoto said while Naruto shook his head. I don't think that's it. Sasuke's not the most expressive guy. Trust me, if you knew what I had seen of him then you'd agree with me. I think Sasuke, despite what he said about only wanting to kill Itachi to avenge his clan, he really wanted a good woman by him. It's not uncommon even in him to be interested in girls. I think he was turned off by the eccentric-ness of a lot of them in Konoha, and being alone he thought that feeling any more emotion for anything would make him weak. If it didn't link him to his goal then he found it weak. I think she's exactly what he needed, Naruto said, and Makoto just sighed. She continued to see her son and other family make out before they parted. I don't deny that, but to think that they couldn't come to me with it. Is it my fault? Makoto asked, and Naruto shook his head. No, it's not one's fault. Makoto-chan, there is only one question. When you see Sasuke, is he happy? Naruto asked and Makoto turned back. She saw Sasuke just sit on the ground with Yuna snuggling to his chest as they looked at the moon. Yes, both of them are very happy. If that's the case then I can say nothing. I will respect their decision. Both are grown by now to make their own decisions. So until they tell me, I will play dumb. So, when did you convince Kushina of your little thing? Makoto asked and it was Naruto's turn to flinch as he chuckled nervously. What are you talking about? I haven't done anything with Ka-chan. Makoto-chan, you are a sick woman. A sick, see, Naruto paused as Makoto glared playfully at him while he sighed and threw his hands up. Alright, yeah, I love Ka-chan, a lot. I would do anything for her. I really would. Sorry, but she, Yura and Yuri are my world, Naruto said while Makoto grinned. Is that so? Well, whatever. I'll just wait Yura-san and Yuri too. Makoto asked and Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Yura a few weeks ago and Yuri, tonight, Naruto said before Makoto snickered and the clone poofed out showing the end to its honcho. Oh, this island is weird, Makoto thought to herself before she walked off. With Naruto, 1 hour earlier. Naruto leaned against the wall of Yuri's bed with Yuri leaning against his chest. She sighed happily that she was back in her room and back with her family. She snuggled against Naruto's cheek while the blonde smiled. Thank you for saving me, Naruto-ni, Yuri said sort of tiredly while Naruto just nodded. He pulled the covers over her body while Yuri snuggled into them. It's no problem, Yuri. You're my family. I would go through Shin for you, Naruto said and Yuri just smiled while she opened her eyes and stared up at her brother. Then can you listen to my wish? Yuri asked and Naruto just rose an eyebrow before he arched his neck down allowing Yuri's mouth to get close to his ears. What is it? He asked and Yuri fidgeted in the covers before she smiled and spoke to Naruto. I would like to be treated like you treat Yura-ni-chan, Yuri said and Naruto seemed confused. He glanced down at Yuri's face and he asked for her to elaborate on her wish. I already treat you like a sister. Heck, you are my sister Yuri. I would always treat you. Naruto paused as he saw Yuri shake her head left and right to him. And no, Ni-san. I want to do what you did with Yura-ni-chan. I love you, Ni-san. Please kiss me, Yuri said and Naruto widened his eyes. He lost his voice and that made her chuckle while Naruto looked down. What made you think that I was doing anything with? Naruto stopped as he saw Yuri's playful glare. She leaned up and turned her body to him while she touched his cheek. Naruto stiffened from her touch while Yuri blushed with a smile. I know about you and Nei-chan. It wasn't hard to see. I just know that I love you too, Naruto-ni. When I was captured I kept thinking if I would ever see you again. To tell you how I felt and to have you know the real me. When you came to save me, you were so cool and I loved you even more. Is it because I'm a little immature? Yuri asked and Naruto shook his head. No, Yuri-chan, you're a very beautiful young woman. I didn't know you felt that way. You're not immature, but you're like me. Very eccentric. It's one of the many things that I like about you. Are you sure that you feel that way? Naruto asked and Yuri quickly kissed him, surprising the blonde from the forwardness before he noticed Yuri chuckle as she took his hand and brought it over her waist while the blonde continued and wrapped his arms around her. Both parted and panted. I'm sure, she said and Naruto just nodded absently which made Yuri chuckle. She leaned up and scratched her cheek. Well, Ni-chan, don't you have something to say to me? Yuri asked and Naruto thought for a few minutes before he smirked and nodded his head. I love you, Yuri Uzumaki, Naruto answered and Yuri nodded before she closed her eyes and leaned against her bed. She was quite tired and Naruto could see why. He just sighed, got up and walked out of the room. Congratulations, Kit. You have risen from the rank of motherfucker to family fucker. A joyous occasion for you. So when are you going to screw those two sisters? Huh? Kyuubi asked and Naruto's eyebrow twitched before he opened and closed the door. Akatsuki base. So, Deidara is dead from Uchiha Sasuke. His power has grown, but that doesn't explain why you look so ragged, Pain said to Tobi who was leaned up against the wall. He grumbled underneath his mask as he tried to walk straight, but Naruto's Rasengan to his back had left him more than a little injured. It had caused a great measure of pain to his spine which he was focused on healing at the moment. My state of attire is not your concern, Nagato. You just need to tell me how everything is coming. Toby said, and Nagato just glared evenly while Conan tried to remain impassive, but mentally she just gave a little smirk. She never liked Toby anyway. He was always a mysteriously idiot, and Conan was sure that his plan wasn't what she thought it was. We have all except the Hachibi and the Kyubi. Conan and I had found the Rokubi in a place near Fire Country. We took the opportunity and it worked well. Nothing more than that. Is that what you wanted to know? Pain asked while Toby grumbled and leaned back against the wall. That's right. However, I will need to find some way of Uchiha Sasuke meeting Itachi. Once he learns that Itachi was manipulated by the village, then he'll let his rage take over, Toby said while Nagato and Conan just nodded. The Kyubi Jinchuriki took out Hidan and Kakuzu. He also had a hand in Sasori's death. The growth that he has displayed has been interesting. However, I think that if we're going to have any chance of taking him, then it will have to be soon. The longer we still, the stronger he gets, Conan argued with them both. Toby glanced at her while Nagato nodded. That is plausible, but he is nothing before a god. I will deal with him when the time comes, Nagato said before he felt Toba's chakra increase heavily. He glared at Nagato while Nagato glared back. Both of their individual chakra signatures flared, and Conan just felt the need to take one step back. I will tell you this only once, Nagato. Do not underestimate the Kyubi Jinchuriki. I can't tell, but something about him has changed. Things are out of place that they shouldn't be. If you see the chance to capture him, then take it. Something's going on here and I don't like it, Toby said while Nagato glared at him again. He didn't know what had shaken the man up so much, but he made it sound like Naruto was actually a threat to their operation. Whatever. I'll just do as I always have, Nagato said, walking off with Conan following him. She glanced towards Toby and shook her head before she walked out also. Toby just growled and balled his fists. A few weeks ago he and Deidara had captured the Sanbi, but it turned out that they only took half of its chakra. Something that confused the hell out of the Akatsuki members. No one knew where the other half was, but they would have to figure it out, and soon. Back in Uzushiogakure, next morning. Everyone in the room minus Suigetsu, Jugo, Karen, Yukimaru, Rin, Zabuza, and Haku, who were all still sleeping off from yesterday. They had gathered to discuss something of great importance, and it was only when Naruto took out the crystal. Everyone turned serious and nodded as they gathered around. So, what are we going to do with him? Naruto asked while others glanced to each other. They could hear the sounds of tiny cracks as the crystal started to shatter. Naruto handed it to Gurren, and the blue-haired Uzumaki female quickly pressed her chakra through the crystal and reinforced it before giving it back to Naruto. Naruto-san is right. We very well can't keep it in that crystal all the time. Sooner or later it might break out, and, while I hope it never comes, upon Gurren-san's death, then no one, except some unknown Uzumaki, can repair this thing. We could call Jiraiya-sama about it and have Konoha take care of it, Yugao suggested, and Kushina rolled her eyes. And what would he do with it? Jiraiya might be the best Fuinjutsu user out there, but even he hasn't dealt with the Biju. Granted, yes, he did make a seal that was able to suppress Kyubi's chakra over Naruto when he lost control, but that hardly qualifies as experience. That's why when it came to Sochi's Jinchuriki training, I took it upon myself to learn to teach him. Jiraiya rarely interfered in the training, which I was thankful for. Trust me, he would know nothing of what to do with the Sanbi, Kushina said, and everyone else just nodded, taking her word for it. Well, you can't hand it over to the village. They would have a freaking field day over it. The council would tell you to destroy the crystal, and if we did that, then it would rampage just like Kyubi did. Also, giving it to the shinobi would have them experiment on it, which really would be equally as bad, Yura said, and Naruto nodded. While he hadn't been experimented on, he still knew of a few experiments that Konoha did that were more than a little unethical. So what do we do with it? The only thing I can suggest is that we make another Naruto, Sasuke said, and everyone paused before they glanced towards the Uchiha. What? It's the only solution. We can't let it roam, and it seems to be the only option, since obviously material things can't hold them for very long. It's the only solution, Sasuke said, and Naruto slammed the table. No, I'm not putting that on someone. No way are they going to go through what I did. We'll think of something else, Naruto said before Sasuke slammed the table as well. Damn it, Dobi, think about it. We're moving everyone to Konoha in a week. We have half of the Sanbi's chakra right here in this living room. You really think that won't go unnoticed by the rest of the shinobi populace? So unless you plan on putting it in yourself, then you need to calm the fuck down and think. Sasuke said while Naruto growled. Who would we use then? As far as I remember, a Jinchuriki can only be an infant because of the chakra coils. We can't. Naruto stopped as Kushina shook her head. It's not that it has to be. It's that it ought to be. Remember that I told you what I knew of the history of the Uzumaki. Well, Mito Bachan had sealed the Kyuubi inside herself during the time that Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju fought. She had lived thanks to special chakra in her body. It's something that all Uzumaki have. Sort of like you being able to use my chakra chains, Kushina said, and Naruto nodded. And it has to be an Uzumaki? Naruto asked, and Kushina shook her head. It doesn't have to be, but an Uzumaki had stronger willpower of control than most people. The youngest Uzumaki would have to be. Kushina suddenly stopped before everyone heard a bold response. I'll do it, Yuri interrupted, and everyone glanced towards her. Yura shook her head left and right while Yuri just clutched the hem of her dress. Yura grabbed her arms and shook her head. No, Yuri, you can't do it. Not you. Why would you want to? Yura asked, and Yuri just shook her head before smiling. I love my family, Yura-ni-chan. I wouldn't care. Also, we have an advantage in this. Unlike Naruto ni, no one would know that it was me. The only ones who know would be in this room, and Naruto ni's group doesn't have to tell anyone about it. Plus, Ni-san, I want to understand you better. My reasons might be vague, but I want to. I'm the youngest Uzumaki here. Ni-chan, please make me a Jinchuriki, Yuri said, and everyone was silent. And Ni-sama, we couldn't possibly. If word finds out then, Yura said, and Naruto glared at Yuri. His fingers were brought together and his steely gaze unnerved everyone before he spoke. Yuri, I will say ask this only once. Are you sure? I want you to know what you're risking. You won't have to do this, but if you do, then you will be working with me to help you. If you feel anything, then you let me know. Yuri, I swear, you are not going to be alone. Should, and I use that term very loosely, you ever be found out, then I want you near me. People have only begun to accept me as it is. I won't have you go through things that I went through. Those are my conditions. Are we in agreement? Naruto asked, and Yuri nodded. She knew from the tone of his voice that it wasn't one of her new lover, but of her older brother and more experienced Jinchuriki. Understand, Naruto ni, I promise to use the power responsibly. I will try to stay as close as possible and be as careful as possible. I will train with you and Kyuubi-san monthly in the power. We will also have Kushina-sama check the seal every 3 years. I agree, Yuri said, and Naruto closed his eyes while he got to his feet. Yura, do you agree? Naruto asked, and Yura's hair shadowed her eyes. She just sighed and stood to her feet before she brought Yuri into a hug. No matter what's inside of you, you will always be my sister, as well as a fellow Uzumaki. Go ahead, Ni-sama, Yura said, and Naruto nodded. He, Kushina, and Yuri walked off with the crystal in hand while everyone else could only watch. I think I would like an alliance with Konoha. If only to keep my family closer than before. Would it be possible if I could have Tsunade visit Kiri? Seeing this has convinced me of some things, Mei said to Kakashi, and the Jonin just smiled. We'll be sure to tell Tsunade-sama upon our arrival to Konoha, Mizukage-sama, Kakashi said, and Mei nodded before she spun on her heel and quickly went to the shore to leave. She had stayed from Kiri for too long, and it wouldn't do good for the village to bear her absence. Gurren and Fuka waved goodbye to her while Mei just smiled and left. With Naruto, Kushina and Yuri. Kushina guided Naruto and Yuri down the stairs of the Uzushiogakure mansion and into the main sealing hall where her own sealing had taken place. It had been a long flight of stairs, and once they made it to the bottom, Kushina opened the door to the sealing room as the 3 Uzumaki stepped through it. Naruto could see the various age-old seals around the place, as well as a large Uzumaki swirl seal in the middle of the room. Around the walls was a large image of Kyuubi roaring at something. Been a long time since I've been in this room. Ah, I still remember the horrible experiences. Well, if I know Sanbi like I think I know him, then he will at least be reasonable with it. Not that he might not be just a little pissed at being sealed again, but meh, he's a chump. He'll be fine, Kyuubi said, trying to reassure Naruto, and the blonde appreciated the effort even if it didn't take it all away completely. This is where Kyuubi was sealed into me. It will also be the place of the Sanbi. Yuri, take off your shirt and sit in the center of this swirl, Kushina stated, and Yuri nodded. She unbuttoned her top and Naruto's eyebrow twitched before he closed his eyes. Sochi, you aren't going to be able to transfer the Sanbi if your eyes are closed. Don't be so flustered, Databane, Kushina said, and Yuri snickered while Naruto opened his eyes to the sight of a dark red bra strap and the lovely red hair that almost covered it. Like it, Naruto ni. I thought you liked a red design, Yuri said, and Kushina's ear twitched while Naruto gulped. He rubbed the back of his head while Kushina turned to her son.